Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting for Monday, September 23rd, executive session. All aldermen present with the exception of Alderman Position 3. We'll go ahead and bring executive session to order and go through the agenda. This evening, our invocation will be led by our Public Works Director, Bo Mills. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Owens. Item 4 on the agenda is setting and adopting the agenda. We'll do so in the regular meeting. During executive session, if the board chooses, it can move items around or make recommendations to move items around at that time. Item 5, approval of the minutes from the meeting held on September 9th of 2019. Are there any corrections or modifications, additions to that?
The minutes?
Yes, to the minutes. Alderman Sanders?
I have one small one on page 4. The first roll call, it says motion approved. It was not approved.
Okay. Clerk, do you have that? And I believe, just for good housekeeping, I believe Assistant City Administrator and shot clock operator Heisman was present last meeting. I don't see him in the members present, so if you can make that adjustment as well. Any other modifications or corrections? All right, item 6 is citizens to be heard. We already have one sheet. If we have others, we'll recognize our citizens and ask them to come forward and speak to the board. Item 7, special recognition. We have a Beautification Commission Business Award. Mr. Lawton.
The recipient this year is, this month is Independent Bank is the recipient. Ms. Beasley's not here this evening, but I believe Alderman Sanders is prepared to make that presentation.
Yes, sir.
Any questions from the board? Item 7B, proclamation Friends of the Germantown Community Library Week. And we're doing this a little early since we will not have a meeting on October 14th. Mr. Lawton?
Mayor, this is a proclamation for the Friends of the Germantown Community, the Germantown community to raise money to help ways for our library to move from good to great.
Any questions for staff? I'll read the proclamation this evening. I believe the chairman of the Library Commission, former City Attorney Tom Cates, will be here. We'll ask him to speak. And then Vice Mayor, I believe you're the liaison to that commission. If you'd like to have a comment or two, would be great.
Would like that. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments on this item? Item 8, Alderman Liaison reports. As you know, we'll go through from position 1 through 5, and if you could be succinct with your comments and try to keep them at 3 minutes, similar to citizens to be heard. Item 9 on the agenda, Beer Board. We'll adjourn or take a recess as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and we will convene as Germantown's Beer Board. We have 3 public hearings this evening. Actually, we have 1 public hearing and then 2 requests. Mr. Lawton?
Yes, Mayor, before you there are beer permit applications for on-premise consumption for the Cohesion Restaurant, which is 9A, and I'll make this presentation in more detail when we in regular session. The other is from a beer sales permit for on-premise application from Moondance Restaurant. Both of these establishments are located at the Thornwood Development, Market Row. And the final one is a temporary beer permit application for the Rise Foundation, Inc., for a fundraiser that they will be having at the Great Hall and Conference Center. All these applications are in compliance, the on-premise and the temporary beer permit with the city's beer ordinance. But I'll go into a little more detail, Mayor, when we make the formal presentation in the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff at this time? I spoke incorrectly a moment ago. All of these items are public hearings, so we will have public hearings, and we'll ask folks to come forward at that particular time to speak to the board. It takes us to item 10 on the agenda, the preliminary agenda. First item is item 9A, right-of-way acquisition Track 15, Forest Hill Irene Road improvements. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to cover both of these now since they're on the preliminary agenda, both tracks, both 15 and 31. This is in regards to the right-of-way that the city has been purchasing for the widening of the Forest Hill Irene Road project. Initially on these two tracks, when we brought them forward to the board, we were not able to reach an agreement on the appraised value and the settlement costs with these two property owners. However, we did receive a right of entry to move forward with the acquisition, or excuse me, move forward with the construction of the project and then come back to the board with the purchase price. The property owners for those two remaining tracks where we did have a right of entry have now completed their negotiations with the city attorney's office. Track 15 has been settled for a purchase price amount not to exceed $10,000. The original appraisal on that was $6,000. Track 31 has been settled for a purchase amount not to exceed $30,000. The original appraisal on that property was $23,000. The details of both of those negotiations are included in the discussion section of your agenda sheet. Our city engineer and attorney's office is to be commended for the work in securing these tracks and for keeping this complex project on schedule. It was just over a year ago that we broke ground in this project, and there were a total of 27 properties where we needed some form of right-of-way acquisition. Staff requests the approval of both purchase agreements for both tracks to begin the right-of-way process and to close on these two documents. Excuse me, and to close on these two property acquisitions.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on either one of these two items specifically? Any questions on the right-of-way acquisition for track 15 or track 31? That takes us to the regular agenda this evening. Item 11, Warrant, Bank of America. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. This agenda item concerns repurposing the vacant building located at 7665 Poplar Avenue for a new Bank of America site. The applicant is seeking a warrant from the T5 Urban Center zoning regulations for the addition of a drive-through lane at the bank. As you recall, this was the location of the former Verizon site. There is no drive-through there, but to make the bank effective in this area, a drive-through and an ATM process and deposits is necessary for them to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, maybe for Cameron, Mr. Ross, rather.
Mr. Ross?
Mr. Ross, do you know, I thought we discussed this in the Planning Commission, but I don't remember the answer. How long has this site been vacated by Horizon?
At this point, I think it's been approximately a year.
A year, okay. That's all. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Just one real quick question that I know I'd spoken with you about prior to the meeting. There are no new curb cuts planned for this? This is just to enhance the flow?
Yes, ma'am. There are no new curb cuts.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this particular item? Great, thank you, Mr. Ross. Brings us to item 12 on the agenda, change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer inspection services. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. The Board is asked this evening to formally approve a change order number 1 with In Situ Form Technologies in the amount of $10,514 for sewer service inspection services related to the ongoing issues we've had with the sewer collapse and failure impacting the Kimbrough Road lift station. In looking at this project just to the north of where the initial collapse occurred, we noticed another sinkhole was forming. And rather than wait for the thing to get any bigger, Mr. Mills, Mr. Sanders discussed the issue with me, and I authorized moving forward with a emergency change order to at least inspect the line to make sure that we could get ahead of the possibility of another collapse, thereby saving possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars. This inspection work has been done. It's now being brought forward to you for formal ratification.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions on this particular item? Any questions on item 12? Item 13, change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer manhole lining services. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This item is the companion piece to the to the previous agenda item, and we are seeking authorization to line the sewer manhole near the lift station where the other sinkhole, which began, was starting to form. The proposed change order is in the amount of $10,500. As I said, this is a companion piece because in item 12, we did the emergency change order to really uncover what the problem was, looked at probably 105 feet of sewer line to see where another collapse might be occurring in the pipe. It wasn't occurring in the pipe, it was actually occurring around a sewer manhole that was essentially buried after years and years of development on that site. The cost is coming in far less than what we had originally anticipated, thinking it was a true sewer line collapse rather than a manhole. But nonetheless, it is an increase to the initial contract now we have with CTR Coatings in the amount of $10,500. Because of the timing of all this and the upcoming board meeting, we did the inspection services, but the construction itself for the manhole lining has not occurred, pending your approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item? Any questions for staff on item 13? Administration is open to having items 12 and 13 moved to preliminary agenda if the board has a willingness. If someone would make that motion during setting the agenda, we can do so at that time. And if that were done, those would become items C and D. Item 14, contract asphalt milling and paving. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. As this body is aware, we were able to include additional dollars in the city's street paving budget out of the State Street 8 account for the fiscal year 20 budget that was approved. We've identified, and this body has approved, $2.2 million for street resurfacing and painting, and striping for approximately 12 miles of street in our city, which is up somewhat from what we've been able to do in the past, but it's nice to be able to have those excess revenues from our sales tax to be able to plow back into infrastructure replacements such as this. 3 bids were received with standard construction companies submitting the lowest qualified unit pricing for the estimated quantities, and the administration recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item? What was last year's budget amount? Wasn't it $850? Exactly the same? Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions on this item? That takes us to item 15 on the agenda. Professional Services Agreement number 3, Citywide Master Drainage Plan and Infrastructure Inventory Phase 4. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the 4th of 5 phases for development of a long-range citywide master drainage plan. The specific action before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen this evening is to approve a professional services agreement with Barge Design Solutions for the preparation of this next phase, phase 4 of the citywide master drainage plan. The plan itself, upon completion, will provide information on the existing drainage system conditions, location, and the extent of problem areas, inadequate systems, proposed improvements, and the costs associated with any future improvements, so we can identify those and put those in our capital improvements budget. Regarding Germantown Forward 2030, this meets strategic objective number 2. The city of Germantown is responsible for significant physical assets. The city believes that stewardship of city assets is essential to delivering high-quality services to our customers consistently as well as effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this item? Alderman Yonda.
I actually don't have any questions for staff. I was just wondering, since this is part of a 7-year process that we've approved 3 of the last 4 years, I guess, obviously, can we move this to preliminary? I have objections to moving that.
That's fine with me. If you'd like to do that when we set the agenda earlier or later.
Later.
Item 16 on the agenda, Resolution 19R09, Cybersecurity Censorship. Alderman Yonda, you brought this forward. I know you handed out, I guess you put in mailboxes, the resolutions you brought forward. Did you want to hand those out at this time as well? You can, why don't you do that to the members of the dais and the clerk?
Is this the same as what was in my box, or is there any change?
Did you want to make any brief overview or presentation at this time? If you'd like to. Is your microphone on?
Nope.
There we go. Thank you.
The City of Germantown is deeply whereas the City of Germantown is deeply committed to the effective operation of city government in order to protect the health, comfort, safety, convenience, or welfare of the citizens of this city. And whereas Alderman Dean Massey in his oath of office declared the following: I, Dean Massey, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, and the Charter of the City of Germantown. And I will faithfully, uprightly, and honestly demean myself and discharge the duties of the office of Alderman of the City of Germantown to the best of my ability, so help me God. And whereas the promise to faithfully, uprightly, and honestly demean oneself is based on the fundamental principles of public office and public trust, and must guide the actions of our elected representatives every day. And whereas Alderman Dean Massey willfully and intentionally placed and continues to place the City of Germantown at risk of a cybersecurity breach by refusing to take reasonable training to prevent online security attacks. And whereas every other member of the BMA and all city employees have taken this training, with Alderman Massey, and Alderman Massey is the only one that has not completed it. And whereas online security attacks can severely damage and cripple the city's entire information technology network, impacting public safety, finances, and the personal information of our residents. And whereas FBI statistics show internet-enabled theft, fraud, and exploitation remain pervasive and responsible for a staggering $2.7 billion in financial losses in 2018. And whereas law enforcement agencies and cybersecurity experts recommend mandatory cybersecurity awareness training for all computer system users in the City of Germantown now requires this training annually to protect against cybersecurity incidents. And whereas a June 2016 study published by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners said, and I quote, untrained employees are the linchpins for most data breaches. This being an association Alderman Massey is or previously was a member of. And whereas the City of Germantown employees and officials are the first and primary line of defense against online crime to protect critical assets from cyber intrusions such as 9/11 systems, water systems, and financial systems. And whereas effective and mandatory awareness training by all elected officials and city employees is a proven method in preventing unauthorized access to the city's most critical and sensitive information. Now therefore be it resolved that the Germantown Board of Mayor and Aldermen does hereby censure Dean Massey, Alderman Position 3, for violating his oath of office and the Charter of the City of Germantown. Be it further resolved that Dean Massey, Alderman Position 3, is required to complete the City of Germantown security training by Friday, September 27th, 2019.
Thank you, Alderman. Any questions? Alderman Massey.
Mayor, I'd like to know who was involved in drafting this resolution.
Absolutely. My wife and I.
Mayor, I'd like to know if Alderman Yonda reached out to council to help draft this.
I think he just answered the question, but go ahead.
I believe I did just answer the question.
How did Alderman Yonda reach the legal conclusions that I violated my oath of office based on the experience of his wife in himself. Well, perhaps Alderman Yonda can explain it since it's so easy.
I believe that you have violated it. That's what this resolution says. You can either agree to it or not agree to it.
And please keep in mind that during executive session, this is more an exchange. During the traditional meeting, we will be using our traditional debating methods. So continue. Any questions on this item?
Mayor, did you or your staff have anyone from legal review the allegations that have been placed in this resolution for tonight's agenda?
No.
The answer is no. This is the first time Alderman Yonda handed it out.
Can someone offer an explanation for why the resolution wasn't presented to the aldermen and to the public prior to tonight?
Alderman Yonda, go ahead.
It was my hope that you would take the training and I wouldn't have to come up with this.
Any other questions on this particular item? We have reached a conclusion of the agenda items for this evening. We are adjourned till 6 o'clock. Oh, good. You're getting to make sure they're complete?
I did not even watch.
Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting for Monday, September 23rd. We welcome all those that are in attendance this evening. We're glad to see a packed house, and hopefully a lot of people are watching on TV as well. We do welcome all those in attendance. Today's the first day of fall, and Also, on a side note, we do encourage everyone to tune in to watch Bluff City Law tonight, later on. Just some highlights in tonight's meetings. We will have an opportunity for the Beer Board to have 3 applications, and we have a couple of emergency sewer repair requests as well. This evening's invocation will be given by Public Works Director Bo Mills. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Forrest Owens. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, for which it is one nation,
Under God. For all. Please be seated. Brings us to item number 4 on the agenda this evening, which is actually setting and adopting the agenda. The agenda was printed and delivered to the public. During executive session, there was a mention of a few items being moved around. Is there a motion or any amendments? Yes, Alderman Yonda.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we move regular items 12, 13, and 15 to the preliminary agenda.
Those would be items,
C, D, and F. C, D, and E. C, D.
yes, they're
C,
correct.
D, and E.
C, D, and E. Is there a second?
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion,
Well, 1 second. We already have one motion out there.
but I thought you might do them all at one time, but you're going to have to do them individually
And
anyway. So.
is there any will to do these as a set by the board? That is the motion.
Yep.
It was properly seconded? Okay. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens,
Can we restate, the motion is to,
To add those 3 items to the agenda for this evening, to the preliminary agenda.
yes,
12, 13, and 15. I'm sorry. The answer was yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
That motion. Is there a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I'd
the-
like to make a
Yeah.
motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to remove Resolution 19R09, cybersecurity censorship. As a point of order, the...
That was you're in a motion phase right now, not in a point of order. So you've stated that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Alderman Gibson,
No.
Alderman Massey,
I believe Alderman Owens has a point of order if he wants to bring it.
so is there no
Oh,
discussion?
excuse me now. Would you like to make a point of order, Alderman Owens?
Is there, we do not have
Would you like a
discussion.
point of order?
Yes. Is there discussion on this item?
No. Continue the roll call.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
No.
Alderman Yonda.
Motion fails. Is there a motion to set the agenda as modified for the preliminary agenda? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Continue, please.
Alderman Sanders.
Point of clarification, I guess, are we
You're voting on adopting the agenda.
as amended?
Correct.
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
The agenda has been adopted for this evening. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda this evening, approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting held on September the 9th of this year. During executive session, there were 2 modifications made. Are there any at this particular time? And those modifications were duly noted by the clerk. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as modified?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Sanders.
Yes.
The minutes from the meeting of September 9th have been approved. That brings us to item 6 on the agenda, citizens to be heard. We have several requests this evening. Let me read the guidelines for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. The presiding board chair shall have sole authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to board rules. And I've made this statement over the years. We are in a meeting format, not in a rally format. We do not clap after citizens to be heard statements are made. I will give you 2 warnings, and if that were to continue, I will clear these chambers. I know it will not be popular, but it will be done. Our first speaker this evening, and of course you have filled out your sheets. Everyone has filled them out appropriately and signed it, attesting to the guidelines. And so let's make sure we stick to them so I don't have to cut off anyone's comments. The first speaker this evening will be Ms. Sarah Freeman. You have 3 minutes to speak to the board. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Sarah, please start my clock again, Mayor. Sarah Wilkerson Freeman, 7684 Appahon Lane. I understand that aldermen are considering using a very serious device, the censure, to punish, shame, intimidate, essentially extort a fellow alderman into bowing to the undue exercise of authority by a city employee. We've witnessed too often the treatment of Alderman Massey as a whipping boy at the hands of...
Please do not use names, ma'am. Continue.
We have the treatment of an individual who we all know as a whipping boy as at the hands of Germantown's royal majority, the 3-2-2 split we just witnessed. This latest power play is what tyranny by the majority looks like. It is an abuse of power. To use censure when there has been no violation of law or code of ethics trivializes the meaning of censure. It cheapens their office through thuggish excess and causes citizens not to take seriously what censure really should mean. This alderman, who is the victim, is not a city employee. He is not supposed to be taking orders from city employees any more than city employees are to take orders from aldermen. There was no legally binding mandate by this body that required this victim to take a 45-minute training that supposedly is all that stands between the city of Germantown and cyber terrorists. Really? While some employees have access to secure databases where sensitive data is kept, and I pray that they are getting far more than a 45-minute tutorial to protect our cybersecurity, The aldermen only have email accounts and access to the same web database that citizens and terrorists have access to. For elected officials to capitalize on the public's fear of terrorism simply to score political points against another elected official is a new low. I, too, have been the victim of gaslighting by one particular alderman who regularly gaslights the victim, and the pattern is clear. Anyone, including private citizens who dare to criticize this administration, are put on an enemies list and personally attacked, while this alderman who is the victim seems to be the current target of intimidation. He is, in fact, a surrogate. The true source of the administration's frustration and anger is the citizenry that has discovered and exposed truly illegal behavior deserving of more and worse than censure. Now perhaps the drumbeat of censure has been stilled, but apparently not. Perhaps the threat of censure was simply enough, intended to silence, but apparently not.
15 seconds.
Indeed, this seems to be an effort to discourage good, honest, truthful people from even running for office in Germantown. For unless you toe the administration's line and keep quiet about questionable expenditures, expect to...
Thank you for your comments this evening. Thank you, Mrs. Freeman. Next speaker this evening will be Christine Massey. Please come forward and state your name and address. For the record, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Christine Massey. I'm at 7915 Nikerton Drive.
Mayor, could you have the speaker stand closer to the microphone? If I need to take him, I can. This is my wife, by the way.
Sure.
Stand as close to the mic as you can, honey. If I need to take him, I will.
Go ahead and begin your comments.
My name is Christine Massey. My husband is one of the aldermen. No, it's okay. I'm here tonight to speak about the time and service that my husband has given the city of Germantown because of his desire to fulfill a call he was given by God a little over 3 years ago. At that time, we had been married for just a year. We purchased our new business, and I was 8.5 months pregnant with Jonathan. The timing wasn't good for our new family, but when you feel you're called as a Christian, you follow. Since taking office, Dean has committed himself to do what is right and what's best for the citizens of Germantown. In no way was his duty to benefit our family, business, or any other self-active service. I've watched this administration do what is best for their own self-service and political agenda while attacking my husband and his motives many times, regardless of how the citizens of Germantown speak out. The censor item on tonight's agenda is more than a cyber issue. If it were simply a cyber issue and of such importance to the city, I'm sure the city would have been more willing to accommodate Dean's request to hold a cyber workshop and provide a city computer for the staff to take the needed training. Instead of honoring that request of the important cyber issue, they used the request to attack my husband and my family personally and made this into a censor issue instead of a cybersecurity issue. The administration is once again making this a personal issue in an act to keep my husband from speaking up for what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Massey. We appreciate your comments. Next speaker will be Dean Massey. If you can come down and state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. And Alderman, as you make your comments, just remember that your role is different. Opposed as an alderman, you're speaking as a citizen and under those guidelines. You have 3 minutes, sir. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dean Massey. I reside at 7915 Nikerton. I would like to talk tonight about the censor resolution. I contend the city charter only allows the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to censure an elected official in cases where there is a violation of the standards of conduct outlined in Article 3, Section 276 of the city charter. The record clearly shows that I have not violated any of the standards of conduct. Therefore, there was no legitimate purpose for placing the censure resolution on the agenda tonight. The administration, aldermen, and the media worked together to create the false narrative that I refused to take mandatory cyber training and I was the only alderman who did not take the training by the arbitrary deadline. The reality is that I never refused to take the cyber training, which was never mandated for aldermen. The mayor's administration could have honored my request to hold a meeting to discuss the cyber training, but instead, city officials responded irrationally by spreading lies in the media and bringing forward this unwarranted censure resolution.
Mr. Massey, hold on one moment, please. Please do not use hearsay or innuendo. Continue with your comments.
There was no hearsay or innuendo in there.
Well, when you make comments that they spread, that yes, that's hearsay. You have no proof of that.
Can you put my time back on the clock?
We have it. You have an extra 10 seconds. Continue, please.
Rather than respectfully honoring my request to allow the IT director to be used as a resource for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the administration arrogantly used him to dictate tasks to individual aldermen through generic email blast intended for city employees. In bringing forward tonight's resolution, it appears the majority wholly disregarded the charter's restraints on the board's ability to censure another elected official and made up their own standards to create an excuse to punish me with a public censure. In cases where an elected official has violated the standards of conduct outlined in Section 276 of the Charter, the board must afford full due process rights before issuing a censure. So it defies logic for the board to deny me the same due process rights in a case where there is no violation of the standards of conduct. For tonight's censure resolution, the city administrator deceptively named the resolution a cybersecurity censorship and failed to provide any additional description that might put myself or the public on notice that the resolution is actually a resolution to censure an alderman. The actual resolution itself was withheld, which left myself and the public unable to prepare comments in opposition to the resolution. In closing, I want to remind my colleagues that as alderman, I have a responsibility to act in the interest of the public. And over 10,000 people elected me to be their eyes, ears, and voice in City Hall. And the people are wise enough to recognize that this censure is really just another attempt by politicians to attack and oppress any of the people who might dare question the decisions of the power brokers in City Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Next speaker will be John Barziza. Mr. Barziza, if you can come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. Appreciate the time to speak. What's the reality here is...
State your name and address for the record, please.
I should know.
State
John
your name.
Barziza,
Thank you.
2827 Brownleaf Cove, Germantown, 38138. What is the reality here is the desire to control the narrative in the community. I saw back in 2015, many commercial appeal writers get reassigned after they followed investigative work done by Sarah Freeman. Looking through emails, many emails that were between aldermen, the mayor, and city administrator, about policy, but in particular about a single employee who eventually got fired. These are violations of the Sunshine Law. Conspiring to fire an employee is a violation as well.
You're on dangerous ground, sir. You are talking about conjecture. You don't have any proof of that. Continue.
Mrs. Freeman has the proof. She has the written proof.
Continue, please.
Since I brought up her name, Sarah Freeman was accused of being a shooter by the very man who brings the issue up tonight about the accused. Our officers have stood for months close at hand to Miss Massey to ensure that she didn't pull a gun. Mrs. Massey and her husband do not own a gun.
Alderman Barziza.
Hold on, sir.
Well,
this is point of order, point of inquiry.
Point of order, you said Mrs. Massey. You meant, I believe you meant
Mrs. Freeman. I'm sorry,
sir,
Mrs.
go
Freeman.
Ahead. Continue with your comments.
Dean's educational background in criminology and his professional background in insurance, his investigating fraud, is a threat to this board. Yes, Dean can be wordy. He digs, but he digs to get the truth. He digs deeply, just as Sarah Freeman did back in 2015, 16, 17, and even today exposing what she has found through emails. This is not about the issue. This is not about this accused. It's about transparency in government. Without truth in government, we have no government. Of the people, by the people, or for the people. The government of secrecy and intimidation is no more than what is in Venezuela or in Cuba. Half the people voted for mayor who had the best interest for themselves, their property values, their homes, and their schools. The other half of the voters, who just don't know any better, it seems, voted for the other side, where controlling the narrative and feeding untruths to the uninformed wins the day. I had a man relate to me.
15 seconds, sir.
I had a man relate, let me just close with this. Back in 2014, when I was running for alderman, a gentleman came up to me and says, no matter if you lie, you cheat, or you steal, as long as you win, that's all that matters.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker this evening will be John Payton. Mr. Payton, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
My name is John Payton at 1705 Old Mill Road. We have seen names to describe citizens such as haters, blanking idiots, bully, NIMBYs, naysayers, the dark side, the willingly uninformed, crazy, dividers, and complainers. We have seen actions that include hiding information from citizens by doing things like hiring a parliamentarian to shut down discussion or creating a no discussion approval list at the BMA meetings like we saw tonight. It was named preliminary or consent agenda. I can't keep up with it. Spending up to $82,000 this year alone on a media company to basically put a positive spin on image and plans. We've seen rezoning land despite a promise to citizens not to. Not allowing citizens or even their spouses in some cases who vocally supported the opposition in elections the right to volunteer for a menial commission, yet placing a person who did vocally support a particular candidate's election by attacking private citizens on a very powerful commission. That happened. Many obvious conflicts of interest in placement of commission positions, yet just because it is technically legal, it is done. We do not seem to care about morals, just legality. Calling and emailing citizens to intimidate them or calling them names about something they said on a social media that makes someone look bad, but turning a blind eye when the same thing happens to someone else. Having family members, workers, friends create fake social media profiles or emails to propagate false narratives, to influence or back up a position on a subject, or just smear someone. Saying things like, I want to preserve Germantown's charm, or I stopped apartments during the election, only to push for buildings taller than Germantown building codes allow. Did you guys, the citizens, know that we do have a 35-foot or about 2-story building limitation in place? But Smart Code allows them to go around that and build these tall 5 and up to 10-story buildings that you're seeing all over Germantown now. We see things like using a political action committee, largely funded by the people tied to development, to attack citizens who support a challenger. Not the politicians, they attack the citizens. When you can't attack the politicians, you go after their supporters. In meetings, we see the rolling of eyes, the making exasperated noises when citizens speak. Yes, we see it. These are examples of a culture of kindness spoken of that is used to quiet or shame anyone that speaks up. Anyone, including city leaders who do not go along with the plan, gets treated like the unpopular kid in high school. Never mind leading by example, we lead by intimidation and bullying. When I bought into Germantown, I expected better than the national political style bickering and voting along clique lines by some against what's truly best for the Germantown citizens. I know when I leave here, if not before, there will be
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mr. Payton. We appreciate them. Thank you. Next speaker will be Mr. Jason Sharp. You have 3 minutes to address the board. If you can come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
Historically, you have never cut speakers off in the second set that after their time has ended. So I think it's unfair tonight.
We have a long list of speakers, trying to get through the list, sir. Thank
Mayor,
you.
I understand, but I think you should show these people the same respect you show the
Thank you.
other folks.
I appreciate your comments. Mr. Sharp, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Yep, Jason Sharp, 7214 Creethwood Cove, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. I just want to speak tonight about cybersecurity resolution. This is a mistake and a planned attack on a sitting alderman. The ask of the alderman was for you guys to actually take cybersecurity seriously and set an actual policy. You know the type of things you guys are supposed to do instead of just being an open checkbook. So it'd be kind of nice. Currently, you guys are using G Suites, which is a Gmail server. It's a good, inexpensive thing for you guys to do, and it makes sense. The problem with the matter is that you're using your personal computers. You have the IT guy sending an email to you guys to click a link, which is absolutely everything against cybersecurity. So Dean Massey is wanting to have, or I'm sorry, an alderman is wanting to have a conversation that you guys are refusing to allow to happen. And you're trying to use a policy that doesn't exist to do a censure that you're not allowed to do. So it's kind of sad and to see where the line is drawn. The line's not drawn when a city official double dips into reimbursement funds. It's not when a sitting alderman uses the no bid contract to actually profit from the city. It's drawn here for some reason, and it's a political agenda that needs to end, and this needs to be put to bed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. The next speaker will be Vicki O'Brien. Ms. O'Brien, if you can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Vicki O'Brien. I live at 7253 Creethwood Cove. I support the alderman that's under attack. His tenure on this board has been met with continuous hostility and bullying. It is time for it to stop. The majority of the voters in Germantown voted for this alderman, and stifling his voice is stifling your taxpayers. Tax-paying citizens as well. I wholeheartedly believe that he has our best interests in mind every time he votes on a resolution. Some, I am not so sure. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. Let's up our game. It's time for the BMA of Germantown to accept this alderman, listen, and give him the respect he deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Next speaker will be Marlene Strube. Ms. Strube, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Marlene Strube, 7642 Foster Ridge, here in Germantown. I love Germantown. My family made the choice to live here in 1992 because of its single-family owner-occupied stability, the better schools in this area, and safety. I was broken into in East Memphis, so here I am. I am very thankful to the founders of this city for having a vision to make it a wonderful, stable community. In recent years, that vision has systematically been dismantled. Codes that provided strong guidance have been dramatically changed, and some rules and guidelines are selectively enforced. It is understandable that there will be some change, but this is too much, too fast, and our infrastructure and services are being mightily tested. The very study that this body authorized for over $85,000 said, and I quote, "Overall, insufficient revenues are generated by growth to cover related expenditures over most of the projection period." The study also says the first 21 years show no benefit. As a citizen, when our city is spending on luxury amenities and encouraging additional dense development that will further strain our infrastructure and services, it concerns me. Why is the focus not on fixing infrastructure first, thus helping protect the current, some who are lifelong citizens, Feels like the way many companies do these days. They chase new customers at the expense of their existing customers, no matter how long they've been a customer. Back to guidelines and rules. How is it that a body thinks it is appropriate to censure someone who has not even broken a written code or even a policy? And yet, some have broken multiple codes and policies, and it has been completely overlooked. Do the rules apply only to some? When people hypocritically gaslight and malign citizens to possibly chill the speech of concerned citizens, all the while claiming a culture of kindness, there is a problem. Citizens are waking up, and they are watching. I conclude my remarks with this quote from Justice William Douglas. Since when have we Americans been expected to bow submissively to authority and speak with awe and reverence to those who represent us? The constitutional theory is that we, the people, are the sovereigns. The state and federal officials only are agents. I would include local with that.
You've reached your time limit, Mrs. Strube. Thank you. Next speaker will be Ronald Carpenter. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Carpenter. I live at 7954 Neshoba Road, 38138. Good evening to all on the dais. I'm going to give you a little background about myself. I'm a 30-year federal employee and U.S. Marine. I've held top secret clearances. I know what is involved in cybersecurity. This little thing that you want an alderman to do is essentially don't click on a suspicious link. I know what that is. And I guarantee you it will not stop what happened in Collierville. What happened in Collierville can happen to us unless our cybersecurity is at its utmost. When I downloaded the packets for the meetings, I saw a thing about 19R09, and guess what? There wasn't a resolution there. Well, what a surprise. Tennessee Code annotated 844-101 requires all meetings by this board to be open. That means I should get a copy of what is in the packet and what is proposed before you guys come up here so we can speak on it. That is our right. And since we know that some aldermen have used email to discuss this issue, Tennessee Code annotated 844-109C says, by announcing an internet-style meeting and open to the public, because they didn't announce it, this resolution should be null and void now. It should never go through. Protect yourself. Protect this board. Protect the citizens. We, the taxpayers, expect transparency from this board of elected officials. That's all we're asking for. You want to propose action against a fellow alderman. In 2016, there was once an alderman who seemed to violate the ethics code and yet no censure. The same alderman made a point of, as stated in the media, wasting taxpayer money by filing massive public records requests that cost thousands of dollars to fulfill. I would like to advise this board. The employees work for us, the employees of the city. And guess what? That means you. You work for us. I pay your salary. I pay the citizens, or the employees their salaries. And if you think that this is a waste of money, I would agree with you. If you were transparent on everything, guess what? We as citizens would not have to file a FOIA request and waste the taxpayers' dollars. Since we did not get a glimpse of this resolution, I'm going to speculate. I can imagine the purpose is to attack one alderman. That alderman has some good points about how the only time he is allowed to view things on city property is during city business hours. Is this the same restriction?
15 seconds, sir.
Is this the same restriction for all aldermen? If it is, then the executive branch is overreaching its authority. I have one last thing to say. This is totally reckless, and it is time for those who are trying to censure an elected official to look at their own lives, and those without sin, cast the first stone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Our next speaker will be Alice Drake. Ms. Drake, if you could come forward, and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
My name is Alice Drake. I live at 7074 Manor Woods Court. I'm the marketing manager for Master IT, a full-service information technology company based in Memphis. As such, it is my job to keep up with the current news and trends in the information technology world and share that via social media with our current and potential clients. In the last 6 months, most articles our company have shared have had the following phrases in their headlines: malware, breaches, scams, hacks, ransomware, cyber attacks, cyber criminals holding data hostage, malware tech, spoofs, phishing scams, and spear phishing, just to name a few. Needless to say, the information technology industry finds cybersecurity to be a top priority today. According to the New York Times, over 40 municipalities have been victims of cyber attacks this year alone, including Lake City, Florida. Lake City has a population approximately 1/3 of the size of Germantown, and it was forced to choose to pay the ransom demand of $460,000 because that would be less expensive than reconstructing their systems. In most cases, these attacks were made through spear phishing campaigns, the kind that our city's IT director has provided training to avoid, and the kind that Alderman Position 3 has refused to take. Alderman Position 3 has made it clear that he views himself as the champion for the citizens against all within and outside our city.
Please restrain from using conjecture, ma'am. Continue with your comments.
If this is true, take the training. In the time that this Citizens to be Heard has been going, you could have completed the training. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Drake. Next speaker will be Sandy Davis. If you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Mayor, I'd like to raise another point of order. I think it's important, if you're going to let the people that are speaking in support of this resolution tonight reference my position, you might as well just let everyone reference my name. I'm not opposed to it on both sides. They are free to refer to me.
We have 2 speakers left, so we're almost completed. Ms. Davis, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sandy Davis, 2857 Old Elm Lane. The majority of this board has consistently fought to operate in the shadows. With the exception of Alderman Victim and our other aldermen, you all routinely ignore the rule of law. When you were called on this, you all just changed the rules. For example, you didn't like the transparency safeguards in parliamentary procedure, so you all just took it out. And now, to add insult to injury, you have hired a parliamentarian with the people's money who told the Commercial Appeal that while he couldn't make us happy, he could shut us up. That's us. That is paying him. To me, this sounds an awful lot like you all found someone willing to use parliamentary procedure as a weapon to silence the tax-paying public. While this is an outrage, it is perfectly consistent with your long-standing and ongoing pattern of behavior to silence the citizens of this community. It's an outrage. Here's another recent outrage. Now that you all have perverted transparency by changing the rules, you have decreed, again, with no vote or public discussion, that we, the tax-paying public, have to pick up the tab for you all to have a PR firm polish up your tarnished image to the tune of $82,000 this year and $124,000 in years 2 and 3. Your image is tarnished because you insist on representing big developers while trying to shut up and shut down the people who are picking up the tab. Recent outrage number 3, you all are spending our money to chase after an award to make you look good. Awards are earned, not purchased. If you want to buy an award, then you should have to pay for it. While you're at it, you all should have to pay for videos to repair your images, not the taxpayer. These examples are not just recent. These examples are not just recent. They are stunts you all have pulled in the last few weeks. But the biggest and most outrageous stunt is your threat to censure Alderman Victim because he dared ask questions. To question you is exactly what he should be doing, particularly given this board's credibility issues. You claim the censure is about security. Many of us don't believe you. We believe that it is just another act of retaliation towards Alderman Victim because you can't shut him up. Finally, Alderman Victim is no politician. He is a whistleblower, pure and simple. Whistleblowers have been my passion for 3 decades. I recognize Alderman Victim was who he was immediately and what he was. Whistleblowers by nature have very specific traits. They become laser focused on truth and transparency. They document everything for the day that a legal authority finally comes in to investigate the corruption they fought to bring to light. Corrupt governments also have very specific
15
traits.
seconds.
They operate in secret as transparency is their primary enemy. When the inevitable crash occurs between the corrupt government and the whistleblower, the government always starts a smear campaign. The whistleblower is called things like paranoid, unhinged, clown,
Davis, that
and
concludes your
crazy.
time.
The whistleblower is ridiculed at every
Thank
opportunity.
you for your comments this evening. We appreciate it. Thank you. The last speaker this evening will be Brian Ulicki. If you come forward and state your name and address for the record, sir. You'll have 3. Please sit down. Please sit down. You'll have 3. Please state your name and record, or name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Light is on.
You got it.
So I have sat back and watched on social media and been very disappointed. People playing political games have worked hard to drive wedges into this community. I saw comments online this weekend that there will be no reconciliation as long as certain people are in office. People have developed legitimate hate for each other, and I think it shows in some comments tonight that you've heard. Terms like haters and royals need to leave our vocabulary. We need to be better than this. Germantown is better than this. We have to do better than this, and it applies to everyone. We cannot resign ourselves to living in a state of constant division. We don't always have to agree. I know that. We're going to disagree about some very important issues in this community, but we must treat each other with respect. I do not claim to be perfect. I understand that. Dr. Martin Luther King said that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So I ask that we all step back and we take some time to think about how we treat each other before we permanently damage the fabric of this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Ulicki. That concludes all the speakers this evening for citizens to be heard. We appreciate all those comments, and more so we appreciate all in attendance being respectful of proper decorum this evening. That brings us to item 7A on the agenda this evening, special recognition. We have 2 items tonight. First item is Beautification Commission Business Award. Mr. Lawton?
Yes, Mayor, this is being awarded to, and we're recognizing Independent Bank as the September Beautification Commission Award winner, and I believe Alderman Sanders will make that presentation to the representatives here.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Alderman Sanders.
Thank you. Yes, if I could ask our Beautification Commission members to step forward along with any representatives that are here from Independent Bank. Independent Bank, located at 7635 Poplar Avenue, was selected by the Beautification Commission to receive the September Beautification Business Award by unanimous vote. The Germantown branch location was established in 2008 and is one of 10 branch locations operated by Independent Bank. This commercial property is unique as the site was taken from a biocontaminated site to a LEED certified facility. Much of the building interior and exterior materials have been manufactured from recycled materials. The structure is highly energy efficient and water wise. The bank has also selected water efficient landscaping for their grounds, including native grasses and evergreen shrubs. Drip irrigation has been installed, which requires less water and maintenance. The planting design has been created and maintained by Agriscapes, Landscapes and Irrigation, which is located in Piperton, Tennessee. The level of landscape detail and maintenance and care at this Germantown business demonstrates their pride in the appearance of their facility and committing to helping Germantown look beautiful. So the beautification is pleased to present this award tonight.
The board, mayor, and aldermen congratulate Independent Bank and your landscape designer. We are so glad that you're in our community. On a personal note, I can remember when that was an old tired gas station, and for the bank to come in and make an investment. It was an EPA site. We don't use that word very often in Germantown, but the mitigation was done. The bank cleaned it up, was first LEED certified property in Germantown. Not too long after that, the city followed suit and did our fire station to those design standards as well. And to be honest, once you started that work on the corner, you had some neighbors on either side that were kind of tired and outdated, and now they've been repurposed. Not everyone loves a pizza parlor, but your neighbor behind you was vacant for 10 years, and now it's a viable next-door neighbor, and your neighbor to the east as well was a couple of businesses that are now more viable than before. So congratulations again, Independent Bank. Thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening will be a proclamation for the Friends of the Germantown Community Library. And the proclamation actually celebrates Friends of the Germantown Community Library Week, which is in late October, but due to us not having a board meeting, in the first meeting in October, we'll go through the proclamation at this time. I'll read the proclamation into the record, and I think the chairman of the library board and our librarian would like to have a remark or two. Whereas Friends of the Germantown Community Library raise money that helps our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, support for summer reading, and special events throughout the year. And whereas the work of the Friends highlights the fact that our library is a cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to the present. And whereas the Friends' gift of their time and commitment to the library set an example for all in how volunteerism leads to positive civic engagement and the betterment of our community. And now, therefore, I, Mike Palazzolo, Mayor of the City of Germantown, do hereby proclaim October 20th through the 26th, 2019, as Friends of the Germantown Community Library Week in Germantown, Tennessee, and urge everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do to make our library a jewel in our community. The chairman of the library board, Mr. Tom Cates, would you like to make a few comments?
I would. If I may stand over here so I may address both
Sure.
the persons on the dais and those in the audience. Mayor, aldermen, friends of the library, and community members. We're here tonight to honor the Friends of the Library as they are being honored across the nation with a Friends of the Library Week, which starts shortly. Would those of you who are friends raise your hands? All right. Not trying to shame everybody else, but
It's only a $10 membership, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
I would like to encourage you to join. When Germantown, the city, took over the operation of our library from Shelby County 15 years ago, we had 12 members of the Friends associated with our library. 12. Now we have over 800 members of the Friends. Hard to imagine. We are number one in the state for the number of Friend members for any community of our size. We're number 3 in the state, considering Nashville and Memphis and Chattanooga, all of the cities in the state. A membership is one of the best bargains that anybody that likes to read could have. For $10 a year, you get a book free a month. In the birth month that you have, you get another book. Most books that adults would want are $2 a piece, so that's 24 plus 2, $26 worth of books for $10. What a deal. Even Amazon can't make that. Except for the bookstore manager, volunteers do all of the work at the bookstore. They sell what we call gently used books. Getting a supply of books is not a problem. People really contribute books to our friends. Some of them really are a little more than gently used, or they're duplicates, things of that nature. And those books are distributed by the Friends to prisons, jails, underserved communities, places where books would be appreciated but are not generally available. In 2018, get this, the bookstore made $67,000 in sales of books. That's a lot of books at 50 cents to $2 a piece. A lot of books. This wouldn't be possible without the help of our bookstore manager, Allison Bodkin, who is sitting right over there. Allison is truly a force of nature. The Friends of the Library Board of Directors also plays an instrumental part in the success of the bookstore. And presently, there are 36 volunteers that staff the bookstore 5 days a week. Lastly, the Friends donate funds from the book sales that they make. And they never lose an opportunity to tell the public that the Friends only operate to assist the public library in Germantown. They have no other purpose. Last year, 2018, the Friends donated $50,000 for use by the library. Over its tenure in full, the Friends have donated over $250,000. Now that allows the library to have those extra things, the lanyap, the things that wouldn't ordinarily be available under its budget, but which make our library, in my view, one of the best in the state. To celebrate our Friends for only a week doesn't seem like enough. We should celebrate them throughout the year. And I'm going to have a call to action here. During this week, go to the Friends bookstore. Thank the volunteers who are working in there. Buy a book and join the Friends if you're not a member, and let's get up to 1,000 members of our Friends Bookstore Association. Thank you.
We thank the Friends and our librarian. Vice Mayor Gibson, I know you're the liaison to the library board. Did you want to recognize any of the board members that are here tonight, or comments?
I would. Mr. Carlin Stewart is here. I believe there may be a few others that are scattered throughout the audience, but Mr. Cates, thank you again for being such an advocate for not only the public library, but for this Friends group. You truly value them as we do and as we all should as a community. One thing that I would like to say, the results in those numbers that we heard from Chairman Cates, they're exceptional. They come from that Friends bookstore, but we should also consider that there's another bottom line that sometimes is hard to measure. And that is simply the impact that all of these books have in serving early childhood literacy and lifelong learning needs in Germantown. We've known for quite some time that the more we read, the better we perform in many areas. All of these books, again, Mr. Cates had brought up as far as those birthday books, and we'll be talking about books from birth here in a moment, but they represent parents who are reading bedtime stories to their children, students learning, recreational readers who are keeping their minds active through exploring the universe of their imagination with a great book. The sheer number of books going in and out of that bookstore and throughout the community is monumental and certainly affects our quality of life through Germantown. So I would just like to say, keep up the exceptional work of encouraging and promoting lifelong readers here in our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well put. That takes us to item 8 on the agenda this evening, Alderman Liaison reports. We move from Alderman position 1 through position 5. Each alderman gives a short update of the activity that their board or commission has currently or planned in the future. Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. The Senior Advisory Commission met on September 19th and continued its work on the upcoming Senior Expo, which will be held Thursday, November 7th from 9 to 2 at the Germantown Performing Arts Center. As of last week, we've had 53 vendors' booths have been reserved. We have 18 spaces left, so any business desiring to participate should contact our Parks and Recreation offices. The Public Safety Education Commission reminds everyone that the Germantown Night Out is October 1st from 5 to 8 p.m. So far, we've had 18 neighborhoods that have notified the city that they plan on holding events that evening. Our citizen volunteers will pair with our officers from the Germantown Police Department and visit as many of these neighborhood events as possible, and we'll continue to promote our new Lock It or Lose It campaign to help keep Germantown safe. The Technology Commission met Tuesday, September 17th, and had a guest speaker from StartCo, a technology incubator in Memphis, who talked about ways Germantown could be involved in promoting new businesses and technology in the region. That completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Neighborhood Preservation Commission met last week where we discussed the Neighborhood Summit. Again, that will be held October 29th at the Great Hall, where the focus will be on strengthening communications to and within neighborhoods, emergency preparedness, and neighborhood preservation. The library board has an exciting opportunity in November. We'll be needing inventory helpers the week of November 11th through November 15th from 8 until 5. Just need you in 4-hour increments. We kind of have an all hands on deck call for that assistance. The library board can announce some exciting news, but before I say that, when we talk about lifelong readers in Germantown, we heard one of those great words that readers know, lagniappe. Mr. Cates, you threw that out so well. The exciting news, though, that we have to announce is that we've inched a little closer to the goal of 100% participation in the books from birth in both Germantown zip codes. For the last report, which was in December, 38138 was at 100% and 38139 was at 84%. As of June 2019, 38138 was still at 100%, and 38139 was at 91%. We encourage anyone with a child ages 0 to 5 to enroll in this wonderful program that cultivates learning lifelong readers in Germantown. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
Mayor, the Historic Commission will meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock at 10 Gen.
Thank you. Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. The Design Review Commission meets tomorrow at 5:30 here in Council Chambers, and the Planning Commission Subcommittee meets Wednesday, but there's been no other commission meetings since my last report.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, I've had none recently. I have several commission meetings coming up, and I'll have a great report next time.
All right, thank you. And just briefly from the mayor's office, I just wanted to reinforce, we got word that the City of Memphis's fire department received the prestigious ISO 1 rating, and we've had that for a couple of years, so I just wanted our chief to know that I think now there are 5 in the state of Tennessee, 5 specific fire departments, and maybe 250 in the country, and only about 1% of all fire departments are able to acquire that ISO 1 rating. So just wanted to say thank you for your investment in our community as well. Thank you, Chief. That concludes Alderman Liaison reports. We are now officially in recess as a Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We're about to convene as the Germantown Beer Board. Those that are here representing the city, the library friends and others that are here and wanted some time to escape, this would be your time to escape. So please feel free to get up and go home and enjoy dinner. Other than that, we will now convene as the Germantown Beer Board. We've got 3 items on the agenda this evening. Item 9A is a public hearing for a beer permit for on-premise application from Cohesion Restaurant. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor. A beer sales permit application has been submitted by A2H2 Corporation seeking authorization to serve beer at their Cohesion Restaurant located in Market Row of the Thornwood Development at 1730 South Germantown Road, Suite 115. The restaurant is located within the T5 zoning district where on-premise consumption of beer is permitted, subject to approval by this body, the Beer Board. A copy of their application, confirmation of the permitted zoning location, and our public notice is included in your packet for your reference. The administration recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Is there a motion to approve the request? We'll have a public hearing in a minute. Is there a motion to approve the request of A2H2 Corporation for a permit to sell beer for on-premise consumption at Cohesion Restaurant located at 1730 South Germantown Road, Suite 115?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. At this time, I will declare a public hearing be open. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this particular application for on-premise beer consumption? Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and speak to this particular item on the agenda this evening? Third and final call. Anyone like to come forward and speak on this particular application? Seeing no one come forward, that concludes the public hearing portion of this item. Are there any questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
The application is approved. When do you expect to open? Soon or? Sooner than later? Late October. Well, we welcome you to Germantown. We're very excited about all the restaurant opportunities that are in Market Row at Thornwood. So congratulations. Thank you for choosing Germantown. That brings us to item 9B on the agenda this evening, beer permit for on-premise application, Moondance Grill and Restaurant.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor. A beer sales permit application has been submitted by the new restaurant in town, Moondance Thornwood LLC, seeking authorization to serve beer at their Moondance Grill restaurant located in Market Row of the Thornwood Development at 1730 South Germantown Road, Suite 116. The restaurant is located in the T5 zoning district where on-premise consumption of beer is permitted, subject to approval of the Beer Board. A copy of their application, confirmation of the permitted zoning, and our public notice ad has been included for your reference. The administration recommends approval of this beer application permit.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Is there a motion to approve the request of Moondance Thornwood LLC for a permit to sell beer for on-premise consumption at Moondance Grill located at 1730 South Germantown Road, Suite 116? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. I now declare a public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this particular application for Moondance to sell beer? Anyone who'd like to come forward and speak to the board on this particular application? Please do so at this time. Third and final call. Is anyone who'd like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one come forward, that concludes the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Are there any questions for staff? Any debate? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
The measure approves. We already know you're open, but now you can sell beer. How soon we'll be able to sell beer? Maybe tomorrow? Maybe tomorrow. Well, thank you as well for being a part of Thornwood at Market Row and providing another restaurant choice for our community. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much. That takes us to item 9C on the agenda this evening, temporary beer permit for on-premise application, Rise Foundation Incorporated. Mr. Lawton?
Thank you, Mayor. A temporary beer permit application has been submitted by the nonprofit Rise Foundation to serve beer at their annual gala fundraiser, which will be held on September 26th from 7 to 11 p.m. at the Great Hall and Conference Center. Per Section 3-81, subsection G, a temporary beer permit authorizing the sale of beer on public property may be issued to a bona fide charitable or nonprofit or political organization as defined by state law, subject to the approval of this body, the Beer Board. Criminal background checks are not required for 501c temporary beer permits. A copy of Rise's application, proof of their nonprofit status, their Tennessee Alcohol Beverage Commission license, and our public notice ad has been included for your reference. The administration recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Is there a motion to approve a temporary beer permit allowing the Rise Foundation Incorporated to serve beer at the annual Rise Evening of Change Gala fundraiser to be held at the Great Hall and Conference Center Thursday, September 26, 2019, between the hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m.? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. There's a motion and a second. I'll now declare a public hearing open to discuss this application. Is anyone who would like to come forward and speak on the temporary beer permit for on-premise consumption by the Rise Foundation Incorporated? Is there anyone who'd like to come forward at this time? Third and final call for anyone who'd like to speak on this particular application. See no one come forward. That concludes the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Any questions or discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
The application is approved. That concludes the work of the Germantown Beer Board. We are now adjourned and reconvened at the Germantown Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Those applicants that are here, if you'd like to go ahead and take your leave, go right ahead. We appreciate your patience this evening. Brings us to item 10 on the agenda, the preliminary agenda. As discussed earlier in executive session, the items on the preliminary agenda were thoroughly vetted, presented to the board. The board had the opportunity to ask any questions of staff at that particular time. Also, during the executive session, it was briefly discussed that some changes could be made and some items moved to the preliminary agenda. During that time, the following items were moved to the preliminary agenda. Item 12, which is change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer inspection services, will become item C. Item 13, change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer manhole lining services, will become item D. Item E, professional services agreement, supplement number 3, citywide master drainage plan infrastructure inventory phase 4. So that being said, you have on the preliminary agenda, item A, right-of-way acquisition, track 15, Forest Hill Irene road improvements. Item B, right-of-way acquisition, track 31, Forest Hill Irene road improvements, as mentioned earlier. Item C, change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer inspection services. Item D, change order number 1, emergency sanitary sewer manhole lining services. And item E, professional services agreement, supplement number 3, citywide master drainage plan and infrastructure inventory phase 4. Is there a motion to approve the preliminary agenda as presented?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Preliminary agenda has been approved. We move to the regular agenda on this evening's meeting. Brings us to item 11, Warrant, Bank of America, Director Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 11 tonight is a warrant for a revised final site plan for the Bank of America site at 7665 Poplar Avenue. This is in the T5 zoning district, directly east of Independent Bank, where the beautification award was given tonight. As you can see, it is a site that is up along Poplar Avenue. It was one of our first smart-coded building sites. What they are requesting tonight is the addition of the drive-through and the covered access for ATM access. There won't be a driver's window, a teller window on that side. Modifications to the site plan also included adding a right-out only option at the entrance area, moving the street side entrance from approximately this portion of the north face of the building to right here at the corner so that it's integrated for an ATM to be placed in the lobby as well for 24-hour access. And then modifications to this area to add in the drive-through lane for the ATMs and the pass-through lane and slight landscape modifications. Total building site area did not change. When you add the canopy, the building grew by 952 square feet. No additional major impervious surface was added. It still is at 63%, and parking spaces were not adjusted, and they still meet the number of bicycle parking spaces. When you consider warrants, the T5 district does allow for vehicle-related drive-through facilities to be permitted by warrant. This, in essence, isn't a design warrant as many of the warrants that you see. This is a warrant related to the use of the building and the addition of this drive-through to bring this bank into operation at this facility. The request from the Planning Commission was to justify trip generation, so that was included as part of your report, as well as the elevations. You can see that the drive-through on this east side of the building, we're looking at the north face of the building, be an ATM underneath the awning, and then this will still be an open lane for traffic to come past. This is a view of the drive-through lane, the modified entrance, and then this is a show of the drive-through at night to show that it will be lit up so that it creates a safe area for patrons to use the ATMs, but does not intrude out into the street as the lighting analysis showed. Within your staff report, we went over the justifications for the warrant. I'd be happy to go over those, but in the interest of time, as we talked about, this is more of a special use-oriented warrant that is allowed within the T5 district for vehicle-related drive-through facilities. This does meet strategic objective number 2 for Germantown Forward 2030 within the economic development section of economic development policies encouraging investment in key commercial areas. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director, for your presentation. Is there a motion to approve a warrant to allow a bank with a drive-through facility at the existing building on the subject property at 7665 Poplar Avenue?
So moved.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Sanders.
I just had one question. I'm sorry I didn't ask it earlier last week, but in this smart code area, is there any minimum height of a covered drive-through area?
Director, go ahead.
Mayor, to the Alderman, no, there is not.
And how tall is this canopy? I can't read it too close. Is it 8 feet?
Director?
Pardon me for just a second.
It's pretty small on this south elevation, or I can't read it.
It's on the south elevation, Cameron. I can't read that drawing. It's too small.
I'm pulling it up on the,
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes, what is your point of order?
Well, if we are unable to read the information that we were supposed to review for this issue prior to the meeting, it seems unfair to ask the alderman to vote on it tonight. Perhaps staff in the future could correct these problems before we get to the meetings.
Sure. Perhaps alderman can call during the week.
There's three aldermen up here, Mayor, with the same problem. Again, you're dictating the terms to the alderman. This is the problem in our government. Do you understand me? Do you understand me?
Your point is well made.
Good.
Yeah, your point is well made. You can call during the week as well, all the aldermen. Go ahead.
Mayor, to the alderman's questions, the height of the canopy is 12 foot, 1 inch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions, discussion? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to point out a couple of things. You know, this was the Verizon building, has been vacant for approximately a year, I guess, according to Mr. Ross in our executive session. And we've got a bank, a viable bank, who is willing to use this. There is a bank, independent bank that we recognized earlier tonight that is right next door with a drive-through. I don't think it's practical or logical to ask a bank to come in and deny them a drive-through canopy. And so based on the fact that we have this bank next door, that it is a vacant space that we're trying to activate, and it'll be a good use for the site, I think the drive-through is warranted and justified, and just letting everyone know my reasons for voting for it.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda?
This probably needs to go to Mr. Ross. The north elevation, the two dark window areas, I don't remember seeing that.
Director, the two dark window areas.
Is that an addition, or has that already been there?
Go ahead.
Mayor, to the alderman, those are existing shutters that are decorative elements.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I had asked during executive session, because I did have a citizen that had asked about if there would be any additional curb cuts at this location.
Director, if you can go ahead and respond to that.
Mayor, to the alderman, there are no additional curb cuts.
Thank you, sir.
Further questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
For the reasons I stated previously, yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders.
Yes.
The warrant passes, and that takes us to item 14 on the agenda this evening. Contract asphalt milling and paving. Director Mills.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor, and Board. First, I would like to say thank you for the level of funding in support of our infrastructure. It really means a lot. You made some street department employees very happy with this extra level of funding, so thank you for that. So our purpose for this agenda item is to seek approval to contract with Standard Construction Company for our annual milling and paving program, an amount not to exceed $2.2 million. Mayor and Board, each year, staff does a pavement condition index analysis on every street in the city. And based upon that aggregate score, which is derived from 10 pavement quality indicators, the streets in the greatest need for maintenance are projected for asphalt milling and overlay. Most of our streets do require milling prior to paving in order to protect the cross-section and the drainage characteristics that the street has. Staff also takes care to keep subdivisions grouped together to avoid inconsistent paving in our neighborhoods. The majority of our program this year centers on some major roads: Kimbrough Road, Miller Farms, Poplar Pike, Hacks Cross Road, as well as a couple of major subdivisions, Dogwood Forest Subdivision and Greenfield subdivisions. 7 of these roadways will require restriping with thermoplastic pavement marking materials. And also, Mayor and Board, the adjustments to the manholes, the water valves, and other utility boxes that are required for this paving are included in this contract. This particular program will restore a little over 12 miles of streets to good condition. You might remember, Mayor and Board, that we had $2.98 million total in this budget, and I'm requesting $2.2 here just for milling and overlay. I plan to come back to the board with another contract for some full depth reclamation on a couple of streets that we need to go down and rebuild the subgrade and then all the way up through Asphalt. So we did not bid these out with this, at this time with this just regular mill and overlay, and we'll bid that separately, and I'll be bringing that back to the board for approval later to expend the balance of these funds. We did receive 3 bids. Staff is recommending approval of the low bid. We have spoken with Standard Construction Company, and they are ready to begin just as soon as we have approval. Mayor and Board, in Forward 2030, our Strategic Objective 2 requires us to be good stewards of our city's assets, and Strategic Objective 4 requires us to provide great city services. This contract work meets these requirements. Staff recommends approval of the annual milling and paving contract with Standard Construction in the amount not to exceed $2.2 million. I can respond to questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Mills. Appreciate your thorough presentation. Is there a motion to approve a contract with Standard Construction Company Incorporated for the annual FY20 asphalt milling and paving program per the unit prices provided in an amount not to exceed $2.2 million? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Alderman Sanders.
Questions. As far as you know, Mayor, will we be losing any in the restriping efforts after this is done? Will we be losing lane usage in favor of on-street parking or bike lanes?
Yes, Alderman, our engineering division is looking at the striping plans for each one of these particular streets, taking into account the bicycle and pedestrian needs for these particular areas. I don't think we are actually finished with those drawings to know exactly what the layout will be. I could defer to our city engineer, but I think we're still in the process of getting those drafted for us, and we will have those soon, but we may not have those right now.
Do we?
Tim says, he whispers to me that we will not lose any lanes of traffic. So.
Great.
But we are planning to address our bicycle and pedestrian needs.
And as far as this list of the overlay, is this necessarily the order it goes in, or do we direct them?
No, sir, we'll absolutely direct them based on traffic needs, based on school. We'd like to work around the school zones when we catch those fall breaks and that sort of thing. But staff will dictate. We'll have weekly meetings with the contractor where we'll sit down and we'll talk about what's next, and we'll move systematically through this.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. I just didn't want residents to think that necessarily they'll go in this order, and so, you know, their streets can be done, you know, ahead of some other ones. So
thank you for clarifying that. That helps.
Thank you, Alderman. Good questions. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders.
yes.
The motion carries and is approved. Thank you, Director Mills. Go pave some roads. We appreciate it. Thank you, Board, for the support. I know the citizens will enjoy having roads paved and kept smooth. That brings us to item 16 on the agenda this evening. Cybersecurity Censorship, Resolution 19R09, and I will read that into the record. It's pretty long, so bear with me. Whereas the City of Germantown is deeply committed to the effective operation of city government in order to protect health, comfort, safety, convenience, or welfare of the citizens of the city, and whereas Alderman Dean Massey, in his oath of office, declared the following: I, Dean Massey, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, and the Charter of the City of Germantown. I will faithfully, uprightly, and honestly demean myself in discharge of the duties of the office of Alderman of the City of Germantown to the best of my ability, so help me God. And whereas the promise to faithfully, uprightly, and honestly demean oneself is based on the fundamental principles of public office, public trust, and must guide the actions of our elected representatives every day. And whereas Alderman Dean Massey willfully and intentionally placed and continues to place the City of Germantown at risk of a cyber security breach by refusing to take reasonable training measures to prevent online security attacks. And whereas Every other member of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and all city employees, but 2 part-time and 2 on leave for health reasons, have taken the required training. And whereas online cyber security attacks can severely damage and cripple the city's entire information technology network, impacting public safety, finances, and the personal information of our residents. And whereas FBI statistics show internet-enabled theft, fraud, and exploitation remain pervasive and were responsible for a staggering $2.7 billion in financial losses in 2018. And whereas law enforcement agencies and cybersecurity experts recommend mandatory cybersecurity awareness training for all computer users, and the City of Germantown now requires this training annually to protect against cybersecurity incidents. And whereas a June 2016 study published by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners said, quote, untrained employees are the linchpins for the most data breaches, close quote. This being an association Alderman Massey is or previously was a member of. And whereas the City of Germantown's employees and officials are our first and primary line of defense against online crime, to protect the critical assets from cyber intrusions such as 9/11 systems, water systems, and financial systems. And whereas effective and mandatory awareness training by all elected officials and city employees is a proven method in preventing unauthorized access to the city's most critical and sensitive information. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Germantown Board of Mayor and Aldermen does hereby censure Dean Massey, Alderman Position 3, for violating his oath of office in the Charter of the City of Germantown. Be it further resolved that Dean Massey, Alderman Position 3, is required to complete the City of Germantown cyber security training by Friday, September 27th, 2019. That is the resolution that Alderman Yonda brought forward. Is there a motion to approve?
Point of order, Mayor.
Move to approve.
Point of order, Mayor.
Be quiet, please, ma'am. Sit down. Sit down, please. Sit down, please, or I'll have you removed. Currently there is a motion on the table. We cannot have discussion until there's a motion on the table.
Point of order, Mayor.
What is your point of order?
Mayor, I'm going to ask that you recuse yourself and the city administrator. You and the city administrator both leave the room. I think that you or your staff violated city policy.
Your point of order is for us to leave the room?
My point of order is that you have that I believe that that your staff, under your direction, has acted unlawfully in an attempt to smear me in order to bring this forward. I don't think you can act as an unbiased chair.
Please sit down, ma'am. I will clear the room. I will clear the room if you do not sit down. Or I will clear you from the room if you do not sit down. All right. Thank you. Folks, we're having a meeting, a public meeting, and if you want to stay and participate in the meeting as an observer, you're welcome to. If there are further outbursts, I will call a recess and have the room cleared. Simple as that. I'll give you one more warning. You can stay if you like. If not, we can have the room cleared. It's as simple as that. Your point of order is not well taken. Currently, this is an item, a resolution that's before the board, and we move on. Is there a motion to bring this forward in the form of a motion?
Again, I moved to make a motion to censure Alderman Massey utilizing the resolution that you have put forth.
Okay, there is a motion to adopt cybersecurity censorship resolution 19R09. Is there a second?
Mayor, I'm going to second for the purpose of offering a compromise.
Great, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Alderman Yonda, would you like the floor?
I will pass.
Alderman Owens, would you like the floor?
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I've got some written remarks, several. I've got some questions that I'd like to ask our IT director, but I feel like what I'd like to do is ask permission to speak directly to Alderman Massey.
If the board has no opposition, that'll be fine.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to you and so I have not prepared this. It's off the cuff, but Alderman Massey and I are not friends. We disagree frequently on a lot of topics that are come before the city. But I was moved, honestly, by Mr. Ulicky's comments tonight about coming together as a city. And I see some smirks in the audience, and I'm just talking from my heart here, and you may not believe that. But I believe that we can have a compromise here and achieve what we're trying to do. I know that Alderman Massey was interested in getting some training for the board, a 45-minute or an hour-long training session that was offered by our IT director, and I think that's a great idea. I would offer that if Alderman Massey would be willing to take the training that we've all taken, that all the employees have taken, as well as the elected officials, I believe he could even do it on a city-provided computer or laptop, that I would make a motion to do away with this resolution, and also recommend a motion tonight that the board would take that training session from the IT director. And I would just implore Alderman Massey to do that. I don't want to vote for censure in this fashion. It is bad for the city. I think we can all agree we want what is best for the city, and this casts the city in a negative light. I've been criticized for being a cheerleader for our community, and I am a cheerleader. I'm an advocate. Maybe that's a better word. But I don't think this is good for our city, and I believe this compromise would compromise exactly what Alderman Massey hopes to achieve by having a work session, and still he gets the training that is necessary, and he can get it on a computer that would not be his own. And so I would offer that, I guess, in the form of, or I would look to maybe Alderman Massey to see if he would be willing to take that compromise.
Well, there's a motion on the table and a second. I mean, you would need to make a formal motion later on, and I will allow this impromptu dialogue. If you'd like to answer your colleague, that would be fine. Alderman Massey.
Alderman Owens, I'd like to have the discussion with the board today. You know, one of the things that I actually requested prior to Alderman Yonda's censure request was that the board actually receive a presentation from the IT director. I think one of the things that we as a board have failed to do is actually provide oversight of some of these decisions. We don't know the cost. We don't really know what the unelected employees of the city are doing as far as the IT training goes. We simply follow the mandates or the alleged mandates that are dictated by the city employees. Rather than simply clicking the link, I asked that the board and the administration provide a full presentation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen so that you and I and the other aldermen could actually have a public discussion about this issue. Following my email requesting the public discussion, Alderman Yonda sent an email requesting to censure me.
Alderman Massey, there was a simple question from Alderman Owens a moment ago about whether to be able to accept a compromise. We understand all of the backstory. We've all lived through the backstory. And so the simple request by your colleague was basically, I don't want to paraphrase Alderman, and I agree with Alderman.
Point of order, Mayor. I have the floor at this point, and you're interrupting.
Actually, Alderman Owens has the floor.
He yielded to me.
I know, but I'm asking you to answer. His question. I'm asking you to answer his question.
Mayor, one of the reasons the board is dysfunctional is because you interfere in the conversations between the members. Like I said, you're not an unbiased chair.
Alderman Owens, you have the floor.
I just wanted to offer this as a compromise, and I'm not trying to stir anything up here. I believe it is a good compromise. I understand about clicking a link, but there's simply no reason, in my belief, Alderman, that we can't all take this training and also take a work session with our IT director. And I respectfully request, implore you to consider doing that, and then we can move on. And this whole issue is dead as we move on.
And I believe, and again, you may say I'm interfering, but the alderman is asking you a simple question. Would you agree to take the training, and then, in essence, this would be over with? I mean, I'm paraphrasing what you asked Alderman Owens, but is that essentially it?
That's my hope.
Okay, that's kind of a yes or no answer.
Mayor, Alderman Owens has brought this forward in or said this in this minor discussion that we're having here, and you've already told him that he has to bring this forward in the form of a motion. So when he brings it forward in the form of a motion, I will finish my comments.
So I take that as a yes? Is that a yes? Okay. If you'd like to, Alderman Owens, if you'd like to make a motion, okay.
And I'll spare everyone the theatrics again, but this is really, I would love to move past this for our city. And so I don't have a motion written down. I know that's taboo, but.
Well, it's actually,
I think we have to get the main motion on the table, and then you have to make your motion, is the point I was trying to make.
We have a motion. It's currently on the floor. You can make a motion to amend.
I would like to make a motion.
And the motion to amend could be as easily read as the last sentence on page 2. Be it further resolved. If you read that, that pretty much sums it up.
I think we have to get the main motion, though, on the floor, and then amend it. We never voted.
It was second.
It's just like we've been doing for years. It's been motioned first and seconded. And so now the alderman has the floor. He's in his allotted time. He can bring forth an amendment. Do you see the sentence I'm speaking of, Alderman Owens?
I do, but I would like to modify that.
That'd be fine. I'm just giving you a guide point.
I would humbly request, or I would move, I guess, to offer a compromise, which would be that Alderman Massey complete the cyber training that we were all provided, employees were all provided, as well as elected officials, and I guess subsequently the rest of the board would take an information training session from our IT director, and I guess to add on to that motion that Alderman Massey would have the opportunity, if he desired, to use a city computer or a laptop provided.
Well, just make it succinctly. He can take the training in any way he desires.
That's my motion.
Okay, I believe what I hear is, and could you put a time limit on it so that it's not, it's closed-ended?
As long as he agrees to do this, I have faith that he is a man of his word, and so I will give him, yes, I guess 2 weeks. How is that? Is that enough time?
Okay, then it's the motion that I'm going to interpret on your behalf is you make a motion to require Alderman Position 3 to complete his cyber training 2 weeks from today.
Yes, and I apologize for being unprepared. I just
That's
felt
okay.
compelled to do this.
That's all right. There's no problem whatsoever. That's been brought forth in the form of a motion to amend the original motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes, Mayor.
All right, Alderman Massey, you have the floor.
The problem that I have at this point is that this discussion should have taken place before the 3 aldermen got a call from the city administrator and agreed to bring this forward in the form of a censure. Yes, I agreed from the beginning to take the cyber training. I never refused the training. I simply asked our IT director to give the presentation to the board as a whole. You know, it's unhealthy for the member of our board to simply follow the dictates of the mayor's administration.
Well, you're entering into conjecture. I'm not involved in this. Alderman Massey, I don't want to be argumentative, but your colleague brought this forward. I did not. Continue, please.
As a board, we need to have this discussion publicly. We need to review this training publicly, and then we need to ask each other questions, and we need to offer our expertise on the issues. And that's the only thing, Alderman Owens, that I ever asked for, was for us to get together as a board and take this training and then have a public discussion about whether we're doing enough to protect the city from cybersecurity threats. I mean, it's really that simple. So if the board is willing to meet as a board and take the training and have the discussion with the IT director, then I am absolutely willing to spend that time with my colleagues and have that training. But that has always been my goal, is for us to do this as a board and not simply brush it off, brush it under the rug, and go on. Let's do this together, and let's provide some oversight of these issues in the future. I think that, you know, there's a problem now, though, in moving forward without resolving this issue, and the board admitting that the censure was premature, because you've put this information out in the media, you've put this information out in the public, and it needs to be corrected. The administration publicly defamed my reputation.
Alderman,
And
we
that
are,
should be
Alderman,
corrected.
we are currently on a motion brought forward by Alderman Owens to allow training to be completed in 2 weeks. That is what's in front of you right now to be discussed.
Are we voting on the actual motion to amend at this time? I believe we would be voting on the motion to amend and not the actual, so we will have further discussion then on the
That's correct.
main motion.
That's correct.
He did.
Any
But I
further
would like to
discussion?
amend, I
Go
would
ahead.
like to amend it, Alderman Owens, so that we all so it's clear that we're all going to do this together as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and not as individual aldermen. And we're only going to do it after the IT director has given a public presentation about
Alderman-
cybersecurity threats and what the city is doing
Alderman
currently
Massey,
to protect the
there's
city.
currently an amendment by Alderman Owens. There's
I just
currently-
amended it. I just asked for an amendment to it.
You can do we have a current amendment on the floor. There can be something to, after this one is thoroughly discussed.
Jesus Christ, Forrest.
Yeah, the amendment that's currently on the floor is to have Alderman Massey complete the training within 2 weeks of tonight's meeting. If you'd like to make an amendment to that, you can.
Yes, I would like to make an amendment to that. You know, I've got 35 seconds, so I'm not sure I can accomplish this in that amount of time. But let me just say succinctly what I want to happen. I want the IT director to give the Board of Mayor and Aldermen a presentation on cybersecurity threats. And I want the IT director to explain to the board exactly how those threats can impact the city. And I want the IT director to give his opinion about whether or not the city is doing enough to protect the citizens from their government being
Alderman Massey,
attacked.
if you could, similar to my assistance with Alderman Owens, if you'd like to amend it to say further training, or a matter of fact, it'd be a good opportunity, Alderman Sanders, to bring in the Technology Commission. They could have this with us, have a work session. The administration does not object that. As a matter of fact, cyber training, cybersecurity needs to be more in the forefront so that we know that what we're doing. So if you'd like to amend to say that you have, or you're required to complete the training that we have already completed 2 weeks from this meeting, and then to incorporate a cybersecurity work session, would that cover it?
Mayor, I really am trying to work with Alderman Owens
Would that,
to
but
come up with a compromise.
yeah,
No, you're dictating the terms,
You're
Mayor.
past your time, and so I'm trying to help you with that. Would that suffice? You even said in your statement, I'm having a hard time putting this all together. So would that be fine?
Mayor, you're rewording what I said. That is not your position as chair.
Well, because you're too wordy. So can you make yourself succinct?
You don't get to decide that, Mayor.
Certainly I do. I'm the chair.
You don't have that
But
power, Mayor.
your time is expired. The floor is open. Can you conclude your amendment in a succinct, we generally require it in written format, so could you conclude your amendment?
Mayor, Point of order.
Sure.
For you to condemn me for not having this in a written
I'm
format.
not condemning you. I'm just saying we don't have it in a written format. So can you succinctly?
I didn't have the resolution in a written format
Could
before
you
tonight.
succinctly put together your amendment?
I don't know how to more succinctly put it than the way I put it originally.
Was to have cyber training.
No, Mayor.
Was
you're,
to have, was to
You're
have.
rephrasing what I said. If
Well,
you want to have the clerk repeat what I said and play the record back, then we can do that.
We're not playing the recording back. Could you just make your motion, please?
I've done that, Mayor.
Well, I tried to restate it for you. Are you in agreement? The motion was to complete your cyber training within 2 weeks and to have a work session of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on cybersecurity. That's pretty easy.
She explains what Alderman Massey asked.
Everything that you said.
Mayor,
but it puts it in something that's easily formatted.
Mayor, what I said is that I would like for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to take this training together. And in the same meeting, I would like for the IT director.
Sure, that's all. And what the IT director presents will be, he'll present that. It'll all encompass that.
Mayor, you have other aldermen who are now telling you not to interrupt me. You're abusing your power as chair, and it's wrong. You're
Alderman,
interfering with our business.
I'm trying to facilitate this meeting moving forward. You're having a hard
interfering
time
with the
that.
business.
So, did I safely state your amendment?
Mayor, I stated my amendment as I meant it.
All right, good. Well, the amendment should read that the alderman will complete.
No, Mayor, you don't get to determine what my amendment said.
Well, nobody's writing it down, so why don't you write it down?
Point of order.
Yeah, what is your point of order, Vice Mayor?
Would it be possible to, my point of order is simply to state the amended amendment, and if the alderman could do that, that would be helpful. The alderman, if he could do that, that would be helpful.
Alderman, your point of order is well taken.
Let me make a motion. Why don't we do what should have been done from the beginning and postpone this vote?
Well,
then reach an agreement after having a discussion in a cybersecurity work session or in a Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting.
Alderman,
This censure motion was far, far premature.
Alderman, what we have is you have the ability to amend Alderman Owen's amendment. Would you like to restate that quickly, as the Vice Mayor has asked?
I stated my amendment. There is a record of that amendment. We should be able to move forward based on what I requested. I'd like I think we need to replay the record because I thought that I incorporated everything that I wanted to have done in my comments.
It's hard to ask for a second for that. Is there a second? To amend the amendment, subject to the comments of the alderman.
Yeah, I would second the amendment.
All right, it's been brought forward, and it is an amendment to the Alderman Owen's original amendment, so it could be voted on at one parliamentarian or two separate.
I don't either, but I think.
Why don't we just come back and pull the amendment? If y'all want to bring another such a resolution, bring it later.
All right, it's currently on the floor to amend the amendment. It's been properly motioned and seconded.
Point of inquiry.
Yes.
What is the amendment?
The amendment.
And I'm happy to wait for the alderman to answer what the amendment to the amendment is. We've got all the time in the world.
Well, your point of inquiry is well taken. It's well made. The problem with not having it written is that it makes it difficult to repeat. Or do you have anything? Do you want to put it down?
Mayor, I've stated my motion. I'm not sure that I can repeat what I said earlier. This needs to be postponed. I'll go back. I will read what I've said into the comments, and then I will bring my comments back in the form of a written motion. But again, I would note that the resolution wasn't provided to us in advance. Alderman Owens made his amendments on the fly, and then I was asked to respond to two.
Massey, that would be,
motions. So,
that would be then a motion to postpone, if you like.
yes, I would like to make a motion to postpone this vote. Actually, do we have a discussion about the motion to postpone?
Gotcha. Yes, it can be, but it only has to, you can only debate the actual wisdom of postponement, not going into the main motion or any of the other items.
I withdraw my motion.
All righty. To postpone. There- Yes, to postpone.
So we're good, we can get this compromise done.
Do you have a point of order, Alderman Owens?
No, where are we?
We are currently on Alderman Massey's motion to amend, to take his training within 2 weeks of tonight,
Okay.
to have a comprehensive work session of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to discuss cybersecurity.
In which case, our IT director talks about, are we doing enough for our city to
Sure, you can,
financially-
all five of you guys could send him your ideas, recommendations, thoughts on what you'd like to have presented.
I think Alderman Massey and I are very close, and I believe we can get
All
this
right.
done, and so, yes.
Mayor,
Yeah.
what I would ask is that we do the work session before I complete this training. Remember, Alderman Owens, I'm also a business person. I own my own business, and I have a family. So, for me to have to take this training, it's going to require my own time and resources. 2 weeks may and may not, but so what I'm asking is for a compromise there, that we have our work session. That way we're assured that we have the work session. Matter of fact, I could take the training after the work session even. That's probably what we should do, is tie it to the work session, and then I'll take the training at the work session and use one of the city's computers, and that solves the problem with putting my own computers at risk by clicking on the link.
We have taken the training already, so I don't want to take the training again with you respectfully. I am all for having our IT director give us a work session. I would like, I think you are a man of your word, and so I would like to put on the books that we have a certain number of time before that you are to complete your training, and if we can get that work session scheduled in the next 2 weeks, then I'm fine with that. But I also am a family man like you, and had to take time out of my workday to complete this training, and I think it's very important, and I think you realize that too. And so if we can get a work session scheduled within 2 weeks, I will make every effort to be there, and I think we all will, if we can get this done. We all want this to happen. It's for the good of the city. Let's move forward.
The two of you seem to have been negotiating. Is all the original motions there?
I think it is.
Okay.
Let's
Well, hold on a moment. Let's reach conclusion here. Let's reach some finality. There seems to be concurrence that a great compromise is, and with all due respect, we all took the training, we all sacrificed, and we all worked too. So we understand that completely. But what Alderman Owens brought forward was to take the training within 2 weeks, and then we will schedule cybersecurity awareness work session, comprehensive, and
No.
that's what's there right now.
I don't think that's what he's saying. What my amendment would do now is schedule the work session.
Alderman,
and then as
I tell you
part
what,
of that work session,
Alderman
I would
Massey-
agree to take the training after the board completed its. I'm not asking the board at this point to have to take the training that they've already had. What I'm telling you is that before or after the work session, I'll agree to take the training. That's a very fair compromise in my opinion.
The motion, but that's not the motion before you. If you'd like to adjust that and get some head nods, Alderman Owens, because you brought this forward, that taking the cybersecurity training would be open-ended. There's not a date. That's what seems to be what you two compromised on.
So I would say after the work session, within 2 days after the work session.
That's fine. I don't think we need to put that in the form of a motion. I think everyone can be in agreement.
I think so too.
So the amended motion should read, Alderman Massey should take his training, should complete his training, and that the city would have a comprehensive cybersecurity training put forth by the IT director.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're tying that training, the work session for the entire board, to me taking the cyber training myself, because before or after that meeting, I'm going to use one of the city's computers.
That's fine. You can do that at your leisure, sir. You can do that however you schedule it. You could have done that at any point in time, so that's fine. That's been brought forth in the form of a amended motion. It has been already, I believe it has been brought forward by Alderman Massey. It was actually seconded. Are you okay with these adjustments?
Yes,
Alderman Sanders?
I believe that's a good compromise, and I understand what the amendment is.
Great. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Yes. Well, no, we're going to go back to the main motion and discuss.
Correct.
That's fine.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, this discussion is about a formal statement of disapproval for a colleague. It's important to understand how it all began, and so while...
Point of order, Mayor. Are we working on our motion, or are we going back to the main motion at this one? It sounds like Alderman Gibson's going back to the main motion.
Go ahead. The point is well taken. Vice Mayor? So, this is discussion on the amended motion right now.
And if this is approved, will there be discussion on the main motion?
No.
We have to amend it. We'll come back to the main motion.
So
Yes.
to that point of order, or the point of inquiry, the comments that I'm going to make are in whether I will support or not support an amendment to compromise. But I think that my comments should be heard as well as the
Sure,
others.
but you would speak only to the amended motion. You can speak to the overall motion
Okay.
after this has been amended.
So excuse me. So what I would say is that the fallacy,
Well,
truly.
let me make a quick clarification.
Okay.
The parliamentarian makes a good point. If this amendment is voted upon and it passes, then in essence, everything else is moot.
Correct.
So you have the floor, and speak to what you'd like to speak toward. Speak to the amendment.
So.
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes.
Some of the other members have already been told that they can't speak to the original motion, and now it sounds like you're changing the rules to allow Alderman Gibson to speak to the main motion.
You can speak to the amendment.
I'm speaking to the amendment, and I'm explaining where we came from and how we got here. Is that acceptable?
As long as it's on the amendment.
Allowed to speak.
No problem.
To the thing.
I will refrain from commenting right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can have an open conversation about this issue, since my colleagues would like to enter their comments on the record. I'm not opposed to having an open conversation.
It's been a motion to suspend the rules to allow open discussion.
I'll second it.
Seconded. It's been a motion and a second. Please call the roll. Motion to suspend the rules, clerk.
Alderman Sanders?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
No.
Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
No.
Alderman Yonda?
The motion to suspend the rules fails. We go back to the motion and the amended motion.
Nobody else is going to second it.
Vice Mayor Gibson, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I couldn't hear you.
I said you have the floor.
On the main motion or the amended motion?
Amended motion.
I will refrain from commenting. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss this.
Is there anyone who has not spoke would like to have any conversation?
I haven't used any of my two two times, Mayor. I answered Alderman Owen's
You
questions.
used one of them.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you have.
No, I didn't.
You have used one at this time. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. As to this amendment that's been proposed, I'm in support of the amendment. I believe if we vote for this compromise, that we could end the discussion on this. It's my understanding that if we agree to the amendment, that a work session will be scheduled. At the conclusion of that work session, the alderman has agreed to take the online training, and that negates the need for this resolution, and there should be no further discussion tonight if that occurs. So I'm in support of this amendment, and I encourage my colleagues. I believe it's a good compromise, and I appreciate my colleague for bringing it forth and my other colleague for agreeing to pursue it in this fashion.
Thank you, Alderman Sanders. Is there further discussion?
Mayor.
Go ahead.
The problem, Board, with bringing the amendment forward and ending discussion is it does not resolve the character assassination that I underwent
Well, currently
when it was brought
we're
forward.
talking about the amended motion. That's what's on the table right now.
And
Amendment, sorry.
Okay, point of inquiry then. If we approve this motion, are we going to have further discussion on this issue tonight? Because I think there needs to be some corrections made to the record.
Well, that's not what's in front of you right now. If you want to bring that up through the city administrator and those type things.
Point of parliamentarian inquiry.
Sure.
Parliamentarian,
I'm the chair. Will you speak through me?
Chair, if we approve this amendment, will we be able to have further discussion after the amended resolution or the amendments to the resolution are approved?
This amendment, which is a de facto amendment by substitution, then everything else goes away. So you're voting on tonight what the compromise, in essence, and that would conclude this topic. So you have the floor. Any further comments? Seeing no other, is there anyone else who would like to?
Mayor, I still have the floor. I'm just looking through my notes.
Well, I'm not going to wait all night. I'm going to conclude your time with the floor.
Well, it's my time, Mayor. I think I can use it however I'd like.
But your other colleagues would like to speak. I mean,
Well,
if you want to have
they can speak after my time has concluded.
Go ahead.
Would the board be willing to add a correction to the amendment stating that this censure should have never been brought forward in the first place?
Nope.
You have a compromise that's been crafted.
Mayor?
Yes.
Even the minimal aspects of due process have been denied in this meeting tonight. What you've done is shameful. I tried to compromise. All I'm asking for is for you to clear what occurred to me, clear my name, and admit that the administration was wrong in the way they crafted the email.
The administration didn't craft anything. So currently,
crafted the notice. You did craft the notice. You did create the notice of this, and it was wrong. It was clearly designed to mislead the public.
Point of order.
What is your point of order, Alderman Yonda?
Are we still debating the amendment here? This needs to be moved on.
You are Alderman Yonda, was that going to be a point of order? Stay germane to the topic. The topic right now is the amendment to the main motion. You have the floor, sir.
It still creates an incorrect record, Mayor. That has not been resolved, and that should be resolved either through a public discussion tonight or by an amendment to the motion admitting that.
Thank you for your comments. Further discussion? Alderman Yonda?
There's absolutely no defense for not taking this cybersecurity training first. Absolutely none. This is the first.
Point of order, Mayor.
Point of order.
I'm talking about this.
What's your point of order? What is your point of order?
If
Hold on,
Alderman
folks.
Yonda wants to talk, he should have voted in favor of my motion to suspend the rules. Now he's going back to
Okay,
lecturing
what's your
me.
point of order?
He's not being germane to the topic.
Thank you. Actually, it's well taken.
Are we not talking about an amendment where he wants to take the security training afterward?
That is part of the amendment,
Okay,
correct?
so I'm saying he needs to take it before we have a work session. Is that not germane?
Well, that is germane.
Okay, as usual. Okay, this is the first line of responsibility in keeping our citizens and our city safe from hackers. If he'd have taken it first to begin with, we wouldn't even be here.
Point of order, Mayor.
Amendment with
Wait,
this
no, that's,
amendment.
Point of order, Mayor.
What's
It's
your
not
point
germane.
of order? What's your point of,
in
what's your point of order?
He's not being germane to the topic. I should
Thank
be
you.
allowed to respond.
Thank you. No, there's not responding back and forth.
It is part of it, because you're saying you want to take it afterwards. I think you need to take it first, and this would not have happened if you'd have taken it first to begin with. You know?
Gotcha.
And I'm not, I realize, we want to try to compromise here. Brian Ulicki made some great points. John Payton shot me the bird, threatened me, and left, okay? So, I don't think he listened to Brian Ulicki, okay? I've listened to his crap for years.
Hey, Alderman, please stay in proper decorum.
I mean, I don't think this is going to work. But I think he needs to take the training first, and then I'm more than happy at any time to work with our IT director. His narrative of saying that he wants to take it, but we need a work session, that's not how his narrative worked.
Point of order, Mayor.
What's your point of order?
Now he's not being germane to the topic.
Actually, he is. He's talking about the motion, about when to take training, when not to take training.
It's okay
Continue,
for you to
Alderman
say
Yonda.
I mean, it's okay for you to say things that are not germane, but it's not okay for us to say things. This particular thing is that you first started saying that you wouldn't do it because
He's going
of the
back to what I
IT guy.
first referred
hold
to.
on.
This is not germane.
Point of order?
Point of order.
Well, I
It's
didn't.
not germane to the topic.
Well,
he's
he only
saying
went
that
into
he's
a
always-
sentence fragment, so I'm not sure what he was going to say. Please stay germane to the amendment, which is to take the training, to have the cyber work session and to take the training within a proper framework. That's what's on the table, Alderman Yonda.
Well, I'm absolutely against this. He needs to take the training first, and then I'll be more than happy to have work sessions.
Okay, your point is well made.
He continues to want to divert the facts. He wants to divert what we're trying to do here, and that is to get him to take the freaking training.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Is there anyone else
Mayor.
who'd like the floor?
I'd like to make a motion to withdraw my amendment.
Second.
There's a motion to withdraw the amendment. Well, we can do it by general consent. Is there anyone who opposes withdrawing the motion? All right, we'll return to the main motion that's on the floor, and that was stated earlier. And
Mayor, I'd like
the
to make an
floor-
amendment.
Hold on one moment, please. Alderman Owens spoke and had the floor at the first time, and let's see, Alderman Yonda passed. So, yes, would you like the floor?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to
Okay.
to amend Alderman Owens' amendment.
Well, no. You would be, in essence, that amendment's all dead. You'd be making a new motion.
We're going back to the original motion to have discussion then?
No, the original motion is what Alderman Yonda brought forward and Alderman Owens seconded.
And Alderman Owens had another amendment.
That's correct. That is now no longer, that was all compromised, so that's all gone. So what's your new motion?
Mayor, if we're on the topic of the original, of Alderman Owen, or Alderman Yonda's original resolution, I'm prepared to go forward with the discussion. And the other aldermen seem to be inclined to have that discussion, and I think that that's fair to the public.
That's right. Well, that's where we are right now. So you had the floor, and that you just stated that. The motion's already on the floor.
Those motions are dead. Those amendments are dead. We're going back to the original motion, and we're starting the discussion over.
That's where we are. That's where we are.
We each have 2 rounds.
That is correct. The table is, or the floor is open. Alderman Sanders.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the chair then. I would like to know, this is back on this original motion, does the city have a policy that requires cybersecurity training?
Go ahead. Please, I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Does the city have a policy that requires cybersecurity training?
I will look to the city administrator and to our IT director. I don't think, the answer I think is not currently, but go ahead. IT director, if you'd like to come forward.
Let Tony Fisher respond, Mayor.
Sure. So this training is part of our comprehensive cybersecurity program that we have. This year, I made the training mandatory for all of our users that use our system.
And you decided that it was going to be mandatory for everyone, but we don't have a written policy anywhere in the city that requires it.
IT director?
No, sir, we don't have a written policy. We change our policies to reflect the current threats that we have. And so the threats out there are constantly changing. We have to be able to adjust to those to mitigate or try to avoid those threats.
And this was somewhat in reaction to what happened in Collierville, which was just on the cusp of this training, or prior.
Partially, and it was planned before the training, but those kind of attacks and those things that are happening certainly led to it being mandatory.
So how was this new policy or requirement communicated to the city employees and elected officials?
Director?
Sure. So originally there was an email that went out to all of the employees or all of the users of our email system. That email went out from me explaining the importance of cybersecurity training and cybersecurity protection. Following that, we had an email that went out from our training system that notified everyone of the training itself. And then those users that are enrolled in it, as the clock ticked every, I believe, 5 days, if they had not taken it, they received an email stating that they needed to complete the training. And then within that time, there were several messages directly from me reminding them of the training, reminding them of where they could call if they needed assistance or had any questions about the training. So in all, through that period, there would have been 12 different emails and 12 different notifications that would have been sent to those users.
Thank you, Director. Go ahead, Alderman.
Has cybersecurity training always been required for our elected officials?
Director?
This is the first time that we've required all of our users to take cybersecurity training.
Correct. Because when I first received an email account in January, I made an inquiry with you, sir, that asked, was this link a legitimate link, and were we required? And I believe you replied, it's certainly optional for you, but feel free to take it if you like. Does that sound
right?
Like
and again, we
change
our security policies and procedures based on the threats that we have. The threats at this point we feel are so vital and so critical that everyone needs to take training.
Alderman?
Mayor, do you know of any state law that mandates elected officials take cybersecurity training as directed by the city?
Not to my knowledge. IT Director, do you know of anything?
I looked online, the city's personnel policies. It's dated July the 1st of 2017, and pages 19, 20, and 21, I believe, cover email usage. But anywhere in that written policy, personnel policies for the city of Germantown, does it reference cybersecurity training or a mandate that it has to be taken within a certain time frame to be able to maintain a city account?
IT Director?
It is not in there, and again, it goes along with how we try to adjust our policies based on the current threats. There's a lot of security items and things that we do that are not part of policies that change, things like the filtering that we do, the blocking that we do, password policies, and other things that we do that don't get reflected in that personnel policy, but we must do to be able to keep up with the current threat.
And I would just concur that, the organization tries to be nimble and stay ahead of anything that's front and center as far as security risks. Go ahead, Alderman.
And what is the process for changing our personnel policies, Mayor? How does that work?
Thank you. City Administrator?
Those personnel policies are administrative policies, and they're changed through the administration.
And so the last time they were changed would have been July 17th of 2017, would that be correct?
Mr. Walensky, that is correct. But as Mr. Fisher said, other things change within those policies, and the threat that we were experiencing, I'll give you a good example. The policy talks about health insurance and what's available to these elected officials. If there was a change in the premium, then that's not going to be reflected in a policy from 2017. We stay current with what we have. And so whatever that premium change for all the employees, as an example, would also apply to the aldermen as well. And in this case, the Director Fisher made the recommendation, and I concur, that anybody with a user account ought to take the training.
So if we wanted to make that a requirement, would we not amend the personnel policy and then notify the employees, and then they are responsible for following that guideline?
Director or City Administrator?
Those are administrative decisions, not from the board. Those are things, operating policies that we have internally for our employees. It does not require board action.
That concludes your time on the floor, Alderman.
Okay, I'll save the rest for my second round.
That'd be fine. Further discussion? This is on the original motion. Further discussion?
Sure, Mayor.
Alderman Massey, this is your second time.
Mr. Fisher.
Speak through the chair, please.
I'm sorry, Mayor, this is my first time.
No,
this is my first time, Mayor.
This is your second time on the floor on item 1.
No, Mayor, this is my first time to speak, and when we began this, I asked you specifically if we all had 2 times to speak, and you agreed that we each had 2 times to speak.
Let me confer. You're correct. I'm sorry. You spoke to the amendment. I apologize for the error.
I accept your apology, and I appreciate it. Now, if you could restart my time.
Could you restart that at 5 minutes, please, Mr. Heisman? Go ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Fisher, do you recall that in 2018...
Please speak through the chair.
Chair, can you ask Mr. Fisher if he recalls that in 2018 I sent him an email with a link that I received from an outside source claiming to be offering training? When I sent that email to him, he said, "Do not click on that link. It appears to be spam."
Director?
Mayor, I don't remember the emails that I got back 2 years ago.
Thank you. You have the floor, sir.
For the public's knowledge, in 2018, I sent an email with a link very similar to the links that we received in 2019, trying to get me to click on the link to conduct training. Mr. Fisher, our IT director, advised me not to click on that link. Anytime that I have received links from outside sources to my city email, I have either not clicked on that link or forwarded it to Mr. Fisher for his advice. The aldermen received generic emails this year advising us to click on a link to take training. I did not do that, and I began simply disregarding those emails, assuming that if this was something that aldermen needed to take, that there would be something in the email that said specifically, "Alderman Massey, we would like for you to do this." There was no way for aldermen to know that suddenly we were being required by a city employee to perform a task. Therefore, I did not perform that task. I received an email advising me that they were going to restrict my or restrict the emails of the general employees. It wasn't clear at that time if they were going to restrict my emails. I requested at that time that they not restrict my emails and have a public discussion with the entire board of mayor and aldermen so that we could determine what the terms were for this training, if it was relevant to the jobs of aldermen, and if more needed to be done, quite frankly. To Alderman Yonda's, or let me step back. As I said earlier, even the basic notions of fair play have been thrown out with the way this censure was brought forward. The administration created a very misleading agenda item that called this a cybersecurity censorship. There was no indication in the notice to the public that this would actually be an attempt to use the censor to actually censor an alderman in an attempt to humiliate him for not following the demands of the administration. Furthermore, Alderman Yonda failed to even provide the Board of Mayor and Aldermen or the public with a copy of the resolution. There was no way for me to prepare a response for tonight. So much of what you've heard has been worked up on the cuff or under a presumption of what Alderman Yonda might bring forward. That's not the way our system is supposed to work. And frankly, aldermen, city staff shouldn't be dictating tasks for other aldermen. We should be deliberating on these issues as a body and deciding as a body in the public what should and should not be set as policy for the city and for the aldermen. I would note that individual aldermen are prohibited from directing the actions of staff. So it doesn't stand to reason that individual members of the mayor's administration would be able to dictate commands to individual aldermen. You know, the first sentence in Alderman Yonda's resolution is that there's some implication that I failed to protect the health, comfort, safety, and convenience and welfare of the citizens of the city. I did the exact same thing that aldermen have been doing for decades. It's only within the last 45 days that a city employee suddenly decided that he mandated this for aldermen. But that's not the way we do business in city government. And I simply requested a public discussion, which they denied, and then cut off my emails and began this smear campaign.
That concludes your time on the floor. Further discussion? Alderman Owens.
Yes.
This will be your second time, sir.
Mayor, I have several questions for IT Director Fisher.
Director Fisher, if you can make yourself available. Go ahead, please speak through the chair.
I'm speaking through you, so if I ask these questions, they're going through you. Mayor or IT Director Fisher, given the extreme situation we find ourselves in tonight, discussing censuring of a member of our body, can you give us some insight into the severity of anyone refusing to complete the online cybersecurity training?
Director?
Sure. So, Mayor, you know, we deal with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. We block thousands of things coming into our network every day. In the last 30 days, we've literally blocked over 128,000 malicious items trying to come into our network. We receive probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,000 emails a day coming into our system. More than half of those are spam, they're malware, they're phishing attempts. It is vitally important that all of our users that are using our system take our training and understand how to protect the city and its assets from cybercrime.
And so, Director,
Thank you, Director. Go ahead.
Yes. So because of this risk, I think what we're talking about tonight, the alderman's outgoing email was restricted. Is that correct?
That is
Director.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some have mentioned, whether it be tonight or I've had an email, is it true that our email system for the alderman isn't connected to the internal Germantown computer system?
Director.
So, you know, networks don't span walls anymore. our systems are connected in many ways. The systems that we have, that all of the aldermen, and I might add that as leaders in the organization, you are most at risk. You are most likely to be attacked. Your accounts, your name, your position brings a lot of power, and people want those accounts to try to use those to further their attacks. As to the system being internal only, that's just not the case. You have access not only to email, you have access to other vectors that are used for attack. You have access to calendars, you have access to instant messaging, you have access to distribution lists, to our documents, to our file systems that are used. Any one of those can be used as a vector of attack or a way to get to other documents in the city that are shared with all the city sources. In addition, those accounts that you use have the ability to log into almost any computer in the city. So they work internally and externally. So there is a danger to those accounts, and we do want to make sure that they're all protected.
Okay. I believe now we have information that my colleague has created a new email address for city business, and so I've heard that this perhaps now eliminates the risk to the city, or he no longer puts the city at risk through this type of email. Is that correct?
Director?
In my opinion, no. The emails that are going in, we normally have the ability to ensure compliance with our records retention policies. We have our intrusion detection and prevention systems. We have systems that set policies about security. None of those are, we're able to do with accounts that are outside of our city system. In addition, at some point, when aldermen are no longer aldermen, those documents, those emails won't be in our archives. They won't be there for our records retention.
And so maybe you might have answered this already. I mean, so if we were to completely restrict his email, would that be safer, or?
It would. In this case, I mean, what I chose to do was create a restriction on the email to try to encourage people to take the training. I did not want to restrict it further, as that would restrict citizens' abilities to contact their elected officials. It would restrict ability to receive notices about meetings. So trying to be, cognizant of that, and trying to be, allowing the citizens to still contact their elected officials.
Well, those for all users, though, not just aldermen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was no special treatment given to anybody. There was no different. Everybody here, in terms of our users, are treated the same.
Thank you, Director. Alderman?
Yes, very briefly. I know I've just got a few seconds left. I did receive an email that was asking, and I don't understand this, but about how any link emailed to someone should be behind a firewall. And I guess I'm not probably asking the question correct. About how a link emailed to someone or anyone not on the city system, including aldermen, should be behind a firewall. But we have a firewall system, if I'm not mistaken. Director?
Yes, sir. I mean, we have multiple firewalls, multiple layers of protection that we try to use to protect things. With the thousands and thousands of things that are sent our way every day, we hope to catch them, but all it takes is one to get in. All it takes is one user to click on something. That's how most of these start.
And the best defense to that is
That
training.
concludes your time on the floor.
I'll save my questions for the next round.
Sure. Well, you've expanded both your rounds on the original motion. On the original motion you have.
It's confusing sometimes.
That is your second time. The floor is open, and Alderman Yonda or the Vice Mayor have not spoken yet. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. In 2019, cybersecurity is clearly a critical component of public safety. Our information technology systems block thousands of threats every day coming into the network. Our director just said that. All it takes is one to get through to do us harm. Is the alderman's failure to complete the training putting the city at risk? I don't know that answer, but our IT experts believe that to be true. But what I do know is this: it's a very serious situation that we're dealing with. The training we've done has made significant strides in improving the city's cybersecurity preparedness. When we first started the training, we had a click rate of 31.7%. Those were on those potentially malicious emails. Due to our information technology team's efforts, we now have a click rate of only 1.4%. These are those links that can be clicked on and are frequently the entry point for hackers to do their damage. On September 18th, our director of IT sent out an email titled "Important Message Regarding Cybersecurity," where he went on to write, and I quote, "As you may have seen in the news lately, municipalities are being heavily targeted by hackers. Once they are attacked, it takes weeks or even months to recover and millions of dollars of expenses. Let's continue to work together to make sure Germantown does not become another victim." In this initial email were details on the upcoming training, contrary to assertions that we were asked to click a link. Director Fisher closed with, and I quote, "Thank you for helping keep our city's information and systems safe." Over the next 42 days, 11 email reminders were sent to complete the cybersecurity training prior to midnight on July 30th to anyone who hadn't taken the training yet. The first response from Alderman Position 3 came at 9:49 on Friday, September 30th, the Friday night of Labor Day weekend, August 30th, thank you. 42 days after the initial email to complete the cybersecurity training. It's also important to note that at no time did my colleague reach out to anyone in the IT department or to administration to attempt to find a solution.
Point of order, Mayor.
What is your point of order?
The Vice Mayor is entering false information into the record. I did reach out to the number that's included.
You stated your point of order.
I'll be happy to clarify.
Go ahead.
Happy to clarify. I've come to learn as of, I believe today, a citizen sent me an email an email that was actually never sent. Email that Alderman Massey sent on September 3rd, but because his email was restricted, it never went anywhere. So that means it was not received, not by anyone that he had sent that to. So I go back to, he did not reach out to anyone in the Information Technology Department or administration.
Point of order, Mayor.
To attempt to find a solution.
Point of order, Mayor. The Vice Mayor is entering false information into the public record. She's lying.
Yeah, thank you. Your point is, you're correct. It's not a procedural rule. I think the point was, could probably be well made by both. So you made an attempt, but it could not make its way through. So I don't think either person.
No, Mayor, I called the number. I called, and your staff never called me back. Tony Fisher was out of town working on Hurricane Dorian.
Hold on, Alderman. All right, thank you for the additional information. All right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Vice Mayor?
Had he actually spoken with someone in our Information Technology Department, he would have learned that he could use a computer at City Hall, go to the library, or if that wasn't convenient, he could go to a fire station at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've had 424 full-time, part-time, and elected officials, as well as volunteers that use our email system, that have completed the cybersecurity training. The only person that has not completed that is Alderman Massey. I believe it's important to discuss what this is and what it is not. This conversation regarding censuring our colleague is not because he now wants to have a real conversation about the safety of our computer security. If he had wanted to have that conversation, it's unlikely that he would have waited until 2 hours before a deadline where he'd had 42 new days of opportunity to find a real solution to those concerns.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Yonda, you've not had the floor yet. Alderman Yonda? Please stay focused with your remarks.
This is absolutely, again, I'm starting over again. There is absolutely no defense for not taking this cybersecurity training. This is the first line of responsibility in keeping our citizens and our city safe from hackers. My colleague's 11th hour decision to make this a three-ring circus with the media is certainly a plan that has backfired on him, requiring his narrative to change almost daily. From saying that he didn't think this applied to him, to not taking any direction from our city IT director, and now he interjects, and I'm paraphrasing, "I never said I would not take it, but we need to have a work session on it." Yes, this is a national black eye on our community, now with the national cyber sites reporting on this, and I've yet to see anyone in the industry backing the Alderman's decisions not to take the training. This imaginary feeling that this is a special attack on my colleague is outrageous. This has never been about him. This is his circus, his odd behavior reverting to attacks, name-calling other aldermen, and the administration is inappropriate. That is his attempt to divert the facts and change the narrative. Again, this is about cybersecurity of our community, and if we need more, I'm for discussing and supporting more if our experts feel this is necessary. He has gone about this in all the wrong ways. This is not a behavior, even though we have experienced some of the strangest and costly behavior with my colleague. This is not the behavior that I would expect if someone had a sincere concern about our citizens and city. He needs to take the training. Cyber security is infrastructure for our city. Then he needs to meet with IT to evaluate his concerns. And I do, Mayor, have some questions for Mr. Fisher also.
IT Director, if you could make yourself available, please speak through the chair.
Mayor, some have said that the best way to attract a possible ransom attack is to have the BMA move to censure our colleague. But I'd say this ship has already sailed, as he has already put us at risk by his insistence on bringing the media and national media into this discussion. What do you say?
Point of order, Mayor.
What's your point of order?
The alderman is making innuendos and entering false statements into the record.
What rule is being broken? You said point of order. What rule is being broken? What rule is being broken?
Mayor, one, it's not germane to the topic, and historically you have always shut people down whenever they make innuendo and
I think he was asking whether what national opinion was, and I was going to answer him that I can't.
No, Mayor, he accused me of creating this circus, but it was your city administrator who entered the false narrative into the media that put my family's life in danger.
You had a point of order earlier, so please, no clapping.
No one has put any of his family in danger.
Alderman, the point of order. The point of order is not well taken. Continue with your comments.
You don't have the floor.
Keep them, Alderman Yonda, keep them germane to the topic, please.
Well, give me an example of why this is not germane, Mayor. Some have said that the best way to attract possible ransom attacks is to have the BMA censure him. But I say this is already too late, okay? Because he has put us at risk with his insistence not to do it and making it a national spectacle. How is that not germane?
That's a matter of your opinion and your opinion only, Alderman, and you're entitled to it. Continue.
Okay. And I'm asking him.
Well, IT Director, I guess it's more about cybersecurity, but
The preference certainly would be to stay out of the spotlight in this kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. You still have the floor, sir.
Okay, has Mr. Massey ever told you he would take the training if there was a written policy?
IT Director?
No.
There seems to be a lot of cybersecurity experts around these days. Director, I know you've been doing this for over 30 years. Can you basically boil this down for us? What do we need to do?
Go ahead, Director.
You know, I mean, it kind of boils down to this, Alderman, and Mayor. You know, one person taking the training won't necessarily bring our whole network down, but one person clicking on the wrong link or opening the wrong attachment will. It's important that everybody do this. It's important that everybody participate in this and all of our programs. Again, this isn't our only cybersecurity program. This isn't our be-all, end-all to cybersecurity. We have a comprehensive plan that we use to protect the network, but we have to have cooperation from the people that use our network for it to work.
I think it was stated earlier, your training is somewhat successful, because has it not driven down the click rates?
It has driven down the click rates significantly. we first saw click rates of upwards of 30% of people clicking on links that were potentially malicious, and that rate is now
I
less
send you
than
2 or 3 a week, I know that. Alderman?
Okay. Has there been a request by any of our colleagues to use any computers to take this training? And would we permit this?
Director?
I think that's been answered, but
So-
has any request been made?
So on the first question, there has been no request. On the second question, yes, we have computers that are available. We have them in City Hall. We have them available for loan. We keep a cache of computers we loan out regularly for people to do things on.
Thank you, Mayor. That's the end of my first round.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman, we've two aldermen, or the floor is open. Go ahead, Alderman Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you
Second round.
help me? Censure is something I consider very serious, but has censure of an elected official ever been done in Germantown, to your knowledge?
Well, in my knowledge, yes, I think a couple of different people in the 80s or 90s, you would have to speak to that, but that would be just what I heard. And I'm looking to our city administrator.
That could be possible, Mayor, but I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I tried to conduct a search and I didn't find any, so that's why I thought I would ask you or the city administrator. He's been here quite some time, so I would hope would remember it the seriousness of it. I'm not opposed to cybersecurity training or the issues we're talking about. What I am opposed to is this censorship resolution. We don't have a written policy that requires it. Our charter specifically says in Section 504 that we deal with the personnel through our city administrator, and we have no direct authority over those personnel of the city. I see nowhere in the charter that says our city personnel have authority over our elected officials either. This resolution specifically says that in that next to the last paragraph that Alderman Massey has that we are doing this because he violated his oath of office and the charter of the city of Germantown. But I see nothing in our charter that he has violated at this point. I see no law that the state legislature has enacted that requires our elected officials to do this. I see no city ordinance that requires it. I see nothing in the city personnel policy that is written but likely would not apply to elected officials. But that's for another day to decide. But I just say this is extremely serious to go down this road and set this precedent in the city of Germantown, and I'm encouraging my colleagues to think about what we're doing here tonight. I was very hopeful a few minutes ago that this amendment we had was going to be voted on and this entire thing would go away and everybody's requirements would have been satisfied, but that didn't happen because the motion was withdrawn. So we've had this discussion. I've looked at everything I can try to find to see that there are requirements, and I find none, other than the email we got from the IT director, which was a dramatic change, in my opinion, from what I was told just in January of this year. I got that email. I didn't take the cyber security training, and my email was restricted also. I was very busy that week. I thought having taken that same training just 8 months before would have been sufficient, but as emails started stacking up in my inbox that I needed to reply to you, the residents, I chose to take the training and move on. But it's an individual decision that I made. My colleagues made their decisions, but to vote on this particular censure, I just will not be able to support it at all. I see no grounds other than we think it's a good idea to take it, or our IT director thinks so. But there's a few statements in here that I can't agree with. The violation of the charter. Maybe law enforcement agencies and cybersecurity experts do recommend the training, but can someone just change the rules and start requiring it without proper discussion or notification? Thank you.
Floor is open for further discussion. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you. This past Friday, I received several emails from Alderman Massey, with the first stating that members of the administration had planted, and I quote, a false narrative about me relevant to the cyber training. While I've been copied by him on multiple emails, I don't think the general public is aware that the alderman is the one who copied a Commercial Appeal and a Daily Memphian reporter in an initial email titled New Email Address for Alderman Massey, advising he was establishing his own personal email to conduct city business. And if I could, let me say that again. Our colleague has created an email, separate account outside of what the city provides now, which may not comply with the city's record retention and security policies. In one of his later missives, he went on to say, and I quote, city officials maliciously planted a false narrative in the media about me for the purpose of making people angry at me. I'm not angry with Mr. Massey. I'm disappointed. The alderman's failure to complete cybersecurity training that is used industry-wide by every corporation and municipality charged with protecting their organization's network infrastructure is indefensible. When these breaches occur in a city, critical infrastructure around our city could be affected. Rather than listen to reason, he's drawn a line of refusal in the sand by creating a personal email to conduct city business. And the cry for transparency should ring loud and clear at this offense. The alderman often attempts to pit executive versus legislative branch, and once again, rather than working within the rules in place, those rules designed to protect our network, he's insisted on making a mountain out of this particular molehill in the hacker cyber world, where I do believe he's definitely drawn negative and unwanted attention to our city. And for the life of me, I really can't understand why. For what purpose? My husband works for FedEx, and when their IT department sends a test phishing email and you click through, you're required to take the training to make sure you understand the risks and characteristics of phishing emails. I personally am much more aware of these threats after I took the training. As a duly elected representative of the city of Germantown, it's certainly the alderman's prerogative to wage a war on this issue. But we've wasted so much time, so much energy on, I believe, his reckless and short-sighted decision not to complete a simple online cybersecurity training class to better protect our city system and assets. I would normally say something like, that's unfortunate. But in 2019, I believe his actions are actually inexcusable.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Floor is open. Alderman Yonda.
Comments about this situation and the incredible opportunity for hackers to attack our city that has been brought about by my colleagues' actions. If this was his agenda, he is certainly fulfilling it. Certainly the constant banter, his banter about transparency, has been a ruse at the creation of his new city email address. This is certainly not in the name of transparency. The city has no control over the security of his outside account, and no way to verify any confidential information is secure. We now cannot ensure our records retention policies and laws are followed. That's been mentioned several times. We have no way to archive his emails, as our director, Tony Fisher, has said. No way to even validate the emails coming in from an outside account. Reading these industry newsletters has made me even more aware of how dangerous our aldermen's actions have been, and that we need to do everything possible to make sure that we do not have an issue because of them. I would hope and expect our IT department is on high alert. It is stated that the hackers like nothing more than to compromise an account of someone in a position of authority and use that to further their attack. This is about him taking the training. Just take the training and discuss your current concerns with the IT department 101. It's common sense to follow through with this. And don't take a stand because someone in our IT department has asked you to do it. You're the only one that hasn't done it. It's incredible to me that you don't care enough to do it. Now, with that being said, if he will take the training first and then, which I know is like asking for the world to come to an end, I guess, but take the training first and then have conversations with IT, and if we need to have a work session, I'm all for being there. There's no reason. I mean, the frugality with the truth here is amazing to me. From citizens who've come forward to Mr. Alderman Massey. Unbelievable. But I'm willing to compromise with that, and it's very specific. Take the training first, meet with our IT director, and then if we need a work session, go from there. It's either you're interested in doing that or not doing that. You are the one that smeared your family. We have not done any of that. It's all your comments. Okay?
Quiet, please.
It's all your comments. It's your attack on Alderman or Vice Mayor Gibson. It's your attack on me and my family. Okay? What the hell is so funny? Have you not read it?
Alderman Yonda, folks, come on now.
I mean, I'll be glad to give it to you, and including some of our past aldermen. I'm sorry. If he can do that, I'm for withdrawing this.
Thank you, Alderman. You have some time left. The city administrator, I think, has something from the charter. Just wanted to get out on the record.
I do, Mayor. We've been talking about policies and what's in the charter and what's not in the charter. The charter, the city of Germantown, cities don't exist without a charter from the state of Tennessee. And the state develops what they called express powers that cities must enforce if they're to remain as a school district or excuse me, as an entity, or things that they can do. For example, the charter expressly states that we can have a police department and a water department. We created a school system because of the charter.
Start his time.
But in terms of
Point of order, Mayor.
What is your point of order?
If the city administrator is going to interject comments into the legislative discussion, then I think he should be placed on the clock rather than simply be able to talk for as long as he wants.
I think Alderman Yonda had about 2 minutes left, so
I won't be long.
please,
I can conclude
comments
in
quick.
30 seconds. So there's a provision in the city's charter, it's item 20, and it says regarding the responsibility of this municipal corporation, it states to define, prohibit, abate, suppress, prevent, and regulate all acts, practices, conduct, business occupations, calling trades, use of property, and all other things whatsoever detrimental or liable to the detrimental to health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Germantown.
Point of
Thank
inquiry.
you.
What section was that, Mayor?
Yeah, what section, please? Good, thank you, that's a good point. 2.02.
Point of inquiry,
paragraph
what's the
20.
title?
Thank you.
Corporate powers.
Thank you. That concludes
Point of
Alderman
inquiry. No,
Yonder's.
no, and I still have time, but I have a point of inquiry based on this.
What is your point of inquiry?
Point of inquiry. City Attorney,
City Attorney?
when the charter references powers held by the city, aren't those powers reserved to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and not an individual employee or an individual alderman or an individual mayor?
It doesn't speak that specifically to it. I think it's a combination of all of it.
But I believe that case law says that that's exactly how the state of Tennessee interprets it, is that those implied powers are reserved for the policymaking and legislative branch of government, which is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as a whole. Not one individual alderman, but the alderman as a whole. And this is exactly my point.
Well, I think the attorney just gave you his opinion.
It's not
Go ahead.
necessarily in all the administrative areas. There are day-to-day goings-on that the Board of Aldermen can't manage. They just can't do it. And you've heard the IT director speak to why they have to make decisions on the fly. I think, yes, it does speak to the Board of Mayor, Alderman having power, but it's also administrative, and you just kind of have to.
But you're just guessing.
No, I'm not. I know
He's-
courts imply reasonableness.
He's given you his opinion as asked. Thank you. Good point of inquiry. The floor is open. Actually, Alderman Massey, you are the last person to speak if you choose to.
Sure.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
So no one has waged war on the city over this issue. The only thing that I did was request a simple discussion before I took this training. I felt like that it needed to be discussed in a public meeting before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That was the first email that I sent to the IT director. I also called the phone number and asked them not to restrict my emails and to have a discussion with me. I never received a phone call back. Thereafter, and the reason that I emailed Mr. Fisher the first time is because they restricted my emails. Prior to that, it was a generic email that did not reference the alderman, so it appeared to be just a generic email blast to the employees. There was no way for aldermen to know that we had to take this class, considering that we had never taken it in the past. The first act was that they restricted my emails. And there again, there's a lack of due process. There's a lack of determining whether something could be done in order to keep my emails from being restricted. Then on September 10th, I sent another email to the IT director and the members of the board, and I said that by this email I am asking the mayor and city administrator to place the issue on the agenda for debate at the next BMA, which would have been tonight's BMA meeting. It was only at that point that Alderman Yonda requested that a motion be added to our agenda at the next BMA meeting to censor Alderman Massey until he completes the cyber training. So rather than having a simple discussion where there was some back and forth among the board members and the IT director was used as a resource, they attempted to take official government action to retaliate against me and force me to take this training. And that's why I'm so opposed to this, because we can't just roll over and accept the abuses that are forced upon us by government. At some point, somebody has to take a stand. And the reality is, tonight, I'm standing between an abusive government and the citizens. You know, I'm up here and I'm talking, but I'm not getting anything from this. I'm putting my family's resources, our reputation, and our very lives on the line to have these conversations. In reality, what generated the controversy in the press is when Alderman Yonda sent the motion to censor me, and the city administrator entered comments into the commercial appeal that said that I was refusing to take the training, that it was mandatory. We now know that it wasn't mandatory. We now know that I didn't refuse the training. We now know that I haven't acted recklessly. All I did was request a discussion. Literally, that's all I did. So the real failure occurred in the mayor's administration and the lack of communication with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And if we're going to say that the past few days I created such a reckless act by not taking this cyber training, then the entire Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the administration should be held accountable for the years that went by without having a public discussion about this issue and determining whether or not it was actually needed. Because that's really the failure here. It's not that an individual alderman didn't take it over the past 14 days. It's that the entire board of aldermen and the administration never got together in a public meeting to have these discussions in the first place. Because the reality is that I wouldn't be facing a censure tonight had the board simply agreed to have a public discussion where we each were able to ask questions, enter our ideas, and then decide on whether or not the IT training was necessary. It's not what happened, folks. They first restricted my emails, and at that point, I asked why. I said, why is a city employee taking an action to punish me in an attempt to force me to complete a task that we have never been required to complete? That's all I did. They could have answered my question, and Tony Fisher did respond on September 3rd, and at that point, that's when I replied, assuming that you would get that first reply. And apparently my emails had been restricted at that point, but who would have thought that replying to the IT director, he wouldn't be able to read my email? So the entire thing has completely lacked due process for me. It's been a railroad. You know, if I have to take a censure tonight for exposing some of the abuses in government, it's the price I'll pay.
Thank you, Alderman. That concludes the time on the floor on this particular motion. It's been properly moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Absolutely.
The motion carries. That concludes our meeting this evening. I just want to let the public know that due to fall break, the meeting on 10/14 will be actually canceled, and we'll meet the fourth Monday. We are adjourned.